Just wait to hit live now, Chair. And we're live.
Thank you, and welcome to this morning's Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee meeting, dated the Friday the 19th of February. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I won't go through the full statement because I'm sure you've heard this multiple times now, but it's a case of keeping your cameras off and mute on as well. And obviously, you know, if you want to indicate to speak, then at the moment, unfortunately, the hands up facility isn't working. So either put your name in the chat box, or if you're having technical issues, knock your camera on and give me a wave, and hopefully we'll pick you up. So I said welcome to this morning's meeting. I don't believe we've got any apologies for today's meeting.
No apologies, Chair.
We're all here, so that's great. Any declarations of interest at all?
Laura, I don't think it is, but it's something that perhaps needs to be noted because it'll inform some of the things that I say later. Gareth will decide as to whether, you know, it is a declaration of interest. But as some members know, I spend a lot of time in Pale with groups and individuals. I also work with and consult with the charity HCT, which I consult with. I also have sought opinions and have been approached by other charities who have asked me to express some of their views today. I don't think that is a direct interest, but I think I needed to get it on the record to form, so people understand why I might be commenting later.
None of that is a personal interest, Chair.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Evan. Okay, so next agenda item, which is the minutes from the meeting of the 29th of January 2021. So for a true record, if we go through quite quickly, because I'm hoping that we've all gone through it anyway. So page 1 of the agenda, page
Chair.
2. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. You know, I might sound like a long playing record, but on the first page of it, which is actually page 3, it says the minutes of the meeting of the 30th of October were accepted as a true and accurate record. Unless I was in a different meeting, I thought, first of all, we agreed that we'd receive draft minutes a week later after the meeting. We also agreed we'd have an action sheet with follow-ups and recommendations. Now, this goes back months now, and each time we come back with the same format. So I really don't think that it's in our best interests to be just saying everything's fine when clearly these issues were raised. And I don't know why we hadn't received, if we'd agreed to receive the minutes a week after the meeting, then why haven't we received them? Why don't we still have an action sheet? And why haven't we still have updates on the recommendations which we've made at past meetings?
Thanks, Matthew. I think we've got the action sheet now that's come out. I've received an action sheet. Has it been sent to the full committee? Can I just check?
I've just resent them out to the relevant officers who are in the meeting. I'll resend it again, but I'm still waiting on the answers back for that, Chair.
Okay.
So we haven't received them, unless any other members have received them, have they? The action sheets? No.
Okay. So can we note that point that we need to get those out straight away then?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so noted, Matthew, on that point. So if I go on the agenda page item then, because I think that was throwing some confusion. So agenda at the bottom, it says page 4. Page 5.
Sorry, Chair, page 4, the
Yeah.
bottom bullet point, where it says this could have a large effect on individual schools in terms of teacher numbers and support. Could it read support staff? Because as we all know, there's a pupil-teacher ratio for teachers, but support staff don't enjoy that protection. So when cuts do come, they fall disproportionately on the support staff. So I'm just asking that staff be implemented, not the explanation.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Okay, thanks, Councillor Hurring. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. And finally, page 9. Okay. Any changes? All changes will be noted, and then if you're happy with the changes to go in, I propose that as a true record. Is somebody able to second that?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we go on to our first agenda item, which is the PIL PSPO review public spaces protection order. So I'd like to welcome first of all Rhys Thomas to present the report to us, and then we have Sergeant Priest and Councillor Ibrahim Hayat as well from the PIL ward. So if I'd like to ask Rhys to present this for us, please.
Good morning, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rhys Thomas. I am the Acting Regulatory Services Manager who is covering for Jonathan Keane as he's away on the TTP service. I'll keep my introduction to this paper brief. In summary, the previous PIL PSPO was implemented in 2017, contained 3 restrictions and expired in the middle of 2020 last year. As you all colleagues around this meeting will know, that was mid-pandemic. We are obviously still in the throes of that, and this department is heavily involved in that work. This is the first opportunity we've had to bring a remodelled PSPO to you for your attention and scrutiny. The papers include a proposed PSPO that has been worked on by the Community Protection Manager and other officers of law and regulation with Inspector Stephen Evans of Gwent Police. We have, in accordance with the guidance, met informally to identify the the previous restrictions and whether they were effective, to see whether they need to be reworded or amended, and also to see whether the PSPO as a whole in the previous format needed to have additional controls. As a result of those informal consultations, we have identified the restrictions that you now see in the proposed PSPO. They are increased in number. There are some changes to the wording of the previous PO through lessons learnt in other PSPO works in the city, primarily the city centre. The number of restrictions has increased, and the ability to enforce these falls between Gwent Police and the community safety wardens within Newport City Council. The restrictions prevent low-level antisocial behaviour and are seen as a on-the-spot ability to deal with issues in a preventative or immediate reaction way, and issue a fixed penalty notice. So Scrutiny is asked to consider the proposed PSPO, consider the evidence that has been provided from Gwent Police and from the internal records that Newport City Council holds, consider whether the PSPO itself needs to be re-implemented, and if so, whether you are satisfied with the conditions and their wording, and then to ask for grant permission to proceed to public consultation in the method outlined in the annexes, that you are satisfied with the proposed consultation process, who is being consulted, in what method, and the duration of that consultation, and thereafter to agree to review the findings of the consultation, any subsequent amendments that are made to this draft PSPO as a result, prior to actual implementation. And I think that's important for this committee to understand, and that we're all clear on. This is a draft to proceed on consultation, and we would welcome the Scrutiny Committee's views on the wording and on the restrictions and on the proposed plan prior to consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, thanks, Rhys. I've got a question from Matthew, but Matthew, are you happy for us to speak to Sergeant Priest first, so we go through the lot, or did you want to pick up your question straight away?
No, I'm happy to wait till we've heard from the Sergeant. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matthew. Sergeant Priest, can I ask you to present, please?
Hello, thank you. Yeah,
I don't have a whole lot more to add to what has already been said. I'm quite aware that everyone has had a copy of the proposed prohibitions. I'm newly appointed in the PIL area, but well aware of the issues and the necessity for the points 1 through to 10 on this document. I'm more happy to respond to any questions that are put to myself, please.
Okay, thank you for that. And can I just bring in Councillor Hyatt just to provide a statement on this before we go into questioning?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, being a resident of PIL and the councillor, from 2017 to 2020, our local officers have had a lot more power to do what they needed to do to stop this antisocial behaviour, and the area became a lot more enjoyable for the public spaces and those people that live near the public spaces. The officers obviously need to have power to disperse the crowds and seek guidance and the best way forward to make the area more effective, more pleasurable, because we've had issues in the past where people have wanted to invest, especially down Commercial Road, and because they've seen and crowds gathered in certain areas doing what they shouldn't do, that investment we lost. But subsequently, obviously, with the PSPO order in place, investment started to come back in. So we've got obviously a big advantage to have the PSPO in our community, and being a natural overflow for the city centre, which is well controlled with the PSPO. We need to make sure that then it is extended into PIL, because PIL is the natural overflow for it. Myself and Councillor Holyoke obviously fully support that the PSPO is then reinstated, and obviously this will give people the confidence to live and to invest in our ward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hyatt. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor for questions. Matthew, if you want to come in first there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and I fully support the PIL councillors. I think it's fair to say that PIL has more than its fair share of issues and antisocial behaviour, and I think it's important that we recognise the additional pressures there are in that particular ward. I just want to focus on a question really, because we were told previously that previous sanctions on the PSPO by police were minimal. I think that's on page 22. And yet when we're talking about, and I want to particularly highlight this issue of the page 23 about the sexual exploitation stroke soliciting. We're told it would help police in issuing fixed penalty notices before the more serious offence of soliciting. But previously we've had minimal fines. So I just want to try and understand where we're coming from that particular point, because we haven't used them in the past. We're saying it's going to help, so I'd like some clarification of just how this would help.
Okay, is that one for Sergeant Priest, or is that one for Reese, I'm guessing?
I'm happy for both to respond, I think.
Yeah.
Apologies, I was on mute. If I can respond on some elements for the Newport City Council staff. So the community safety wardens have used the previous PSPO powers. The addition of that restriction, Councillor Evans, is obviously a proposal and it's new, so there won't be any previous use of an FPN in that manner for that restriction, because it's a new restriction. The police in their evidence, and it's appropriate that the Sergeant perhaps follows up on this. The police in their evidence have outlined the issues by the way of a witness statement from a local officer who is heavily involved. So the Newport City Council staff have used them and have issued FPNs under the previous PSPO. I'd like to make that clear. And then on the specific issues on the control use site, it's new, so there wouldn't be previous issues used.
No, sorry, I appreciate that, but can you just clarify when we say in here that the use of sanctions was by the police was minimal? Are we talking about, you know, what is minimal to a lay person? Is it 500, 500, none, one? Do we have any idea of? And how many of the council issued fixed penalty notices?
1 second, Councillor. In terms of PSPO FPNs, there are 8 and 10 issued by Newport City Council officers.
Sorry,
in Appendix 2 of the paper, Councillor, they list the FPNs that were issued through that period. We've also provided non-PSPO FPNs issued in that ward as well to show what could have been issued in a different worded PSPO.
Yeah, so it's just for clarification. So we're talking about 8 or 10 within the 3-year period.
Yes,
penalty notices. So that's minimal. So if that's minimal to me, so from the police's point of view, when we're saying the police is minimal, I'm assuming that must be less than 8 to 10, or the same, or you know, it's a very low number.
Yeah. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. And I'd like to see what the police.
Yeah, I can answer that question. Yeah, the figures would be much the same, if not less. However, yes, the incidence in it is of quite a serious issue in the area, and it's not the only work that we would do with the sexually exploited females as well.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to ascertain the benefits, because we're told you there will be a benefit of using this. I'm just trying to ascertain how much of a benefit would it be, and how likely are the police to issue these fixed penalty notices as a result, should we go out to this proposal?
For us, we do a lot of work with our partners, a lot of what we class as the wraparound support for the exploited, the persons. So it'd be something that's just a bit of additional support that we can provide for them. It's a way of dealing with an incident, which it comes with its own issues. I think we'll touch on drugs and other antisocial behavior, which is linked to soliciting as well. So it is a tool which could be used and would be used, but along with also the support that we would get when working with our partners for the same person.
Because I assume you have other powers at the moment in any case?
Yeah, that would be the case, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'll let somebody else come in now, thanks.
Thanks, Matthew. I've got a question, if I may, before moving on to the next. It's regarding the statement with regards to begging, and I understand that this when we did this for the city centre begging, you know, it was a bit of a long debate, and obviously within the city centre we've got actual criteria in there, which I believe is 10 metres from a cash point. But within this one, it just looks like this is aggressive begging, and this is where it was brought up that there was obviously what's aggressive to one person isn't necessarily aggressive to another person. Within this PSPO, are we going to be going down further in the detail on this one, or are we going to be leaving that as a standard aggressive begging? Because I think, as you said, it's not necessarily, it's such a well, it's a bit washy, isn't it? Are we going to, within this PSPO, are we going to be going down into the detail further? So are we looking at, because it does say the implementation will be similar to the inclusion of the city centre. So is this going to be, are we looking at ring fencing, you know, shop doorways, or, you know, areas where there are cash points? I just wanted to get a bit more information on that, if I may.
Happy to respond to that, Chair. The current restriction is worded so that it can apply anywhere, not just to certain localities. I was not involved in the previous city centre. Is that the inclusion on that PSPO was as a direct result of evidence and issues in certain localities, and hence why it was very specifically made and why those restrictions are there. PSPOs have to be evidence-based. And if there's an evidence, then controls can be tailored specifically to those evidence bases. Here we've got more wider spread evidence. It's not specific. It's not allocated to a particular area or a particular shop window or shop front, for example. So that's why it's been worded in the way it has, to allow officers to have the ability to interpret that and provide the service. Because if you make it specific, then it'll only work in those circumstances. It also is very clear that it doesn't prevent begging that is done in a suitable way or in a non-aggressive manner. So it is worded with that in mind, Chair. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that clarifies that. Thank you. Councillor Houlihan, you've had your hand up there. Can I come in with you?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, nice to meet up with you again, Sergeant Priest, and thanks for all you did in Norway for us. First part of the question really is to Rhys. After the consultation, when is it proposed that this order would be enforced if it is accepted today?
Thank you, Councillor Houlihan. The timescales are that I would like to get the if you agree to the council to go into consultation today on the proposals, or we make changes to the proposal and then proceed to consultation to bring the final draft of the PSPO back to you for agreement in April. And then I think, and I'll turn to Gareth for the final stage here, then needs to go to council for implementation.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. Council will need to approve the final PSPO. So yes, if it's brought back to you in April, assuming that you're happy to proceed, then we could present it to the next meeting of council. I know you've got your AGM in May, so it may well be the one after that. Okay.
So the next part is to Sergeant Priest. So we'll have had nearly a 12-month without a PSPO. Could you outline the detrimental effects that this has had on policing in the Pill area? Because when we discussed this for the city PSPO, I think we more or less agreed that all the powers that are contained within this PSPO, the police already have in one way or another. And I think that's the question, really. How much detriment has there been?
Sergeant Priest?
Yeah, sorry. Struggled to find the mute button. Yes, we do, Mr. Houlihan, have the powers, obviously, to deal with each of the points that are addressed in this document. But it's not only about the powers for ourselves, it's those allowed for our partners as well to support us in dealing with the issues in Pill. It'd be easy for me to say, look, the current issues in Pill to show the levels of ASB and all the contributing factors that we can say that's led to more significant issues down there. But the points in this are there for our partners to be able to assist us in dealing with this. But yes, you are right. We have our own powers to deal with each and every one of the points that are put to you today.
So thank you. So as a general conclusion, it really comes back to what we said at earlier committees. It's going to be dependent on the amount of resources that the council are willing to deploy to this area to see if we get a more successful outcome. Matthew already covered the number of fines that have been issued.
Yes, well, yeah, that's for them to answer. But yeah, absolutely, and we would look to work closely with them and assisting them with any of the patrols in the area. But yes, it would be dependent on them.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I come back on that point in terms of council resources and enforcement?
Yeah, of course.
Just to explain to Councillor Houlihan, in terms of the city centre PSPO, what the police were saying is that they didn't have these powers. What they have are general criminal law powers to deal with more serious offences. Now, what we're dealing with in the PSPO is lower level antisocial behaviour, and what it does is gives the police and the community safety wardens and council enforcement officers the right to take early preventative action to actually stop certain types of behaviour at source before it deteriorates and becomes more serious criminal behaviour. So that was the reason why the police wanted those additional powers in the city centre PSPO, and it's the same with Pill. And this is not just about the enforcement duties being transferred to the council, because the council doesn't have any more resources either. As I understand it, this request is from the police to give them additional powers in terms of enforcement. I mean, clearly the council's community safety wardens will be involved in some capacity, and they will continue to issue FBNs for littering and so on. But most of the additional powers in the PSPOs, whether it's the city centre or PIL, are to assist the police with enforcement. So just to be clear on that point.
But I think taking on from Matthew's earlier point, the powers haven't been used to any great extent.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Houlihan, or are you just happy to make that comment?
Sorry, did you hear my comment that I said, following on from Matthew's earlier question about the number of fines, etc., that have been issued, the powers haven't been used to any great extent?
Chair, all I would say on that one is, I mean, obviously the police can respond in terms of the FBNs that they issue. From a council point of view, this is all about prevention rather than issuing fixed penalty notices. The success of this is not the number of FPNs that you issue. The success of any PSPO is actually moderating or restricting the antisocial behaviour. So actually success for us is not having to issue fixed penalty notices because the behaviour is being controlled. So I wouldn't judge too much by the numbers of FPNs that are issued either by the council or the police.
Sorry, I would agree with Mr. Price on that. It is simply that as well. We're not looking to have a league table on how many tickets we can issue for any one of these points. It wouldn't be a case of that. This is simply a tool, and it would be in place to, to stop that from happening in the first place.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jason Hughes.
Thanks, Chair. I think Gareth has elaborated a lot on what I was going to say, because, for members of the public, when they see, I think it's 48 FPNs between 217 and 220 that were issued, so that's working out at less than sort of just over 1.3 a month. So the public will perceive. So I'm glad that Gareth's given that explanation, that it's about understanding that it's used as a preventative tool as well. It'd be useful to hear something from maybe the police or Reece really around, because we've had a sustained period now without the order in a sense, and I'm just wondering what they think actually that the order will actually give them. If they've seen a period without it, have they noticed that that their work has been much harder because they haven't got it? And because it's unusual for them to have had that period to sort of have a reflective comparison sort of period. And will the additions that we provide, will they actually improve the situation, and actually assist our council workers and the police in actually being able to do their job even better, if that makes sense?
Yes, Councillor, happy to come in there, Chair, if that's appropriate. Councillor, the concept of the PSPOs it provides another tool. So Gareth and Sergeant from police have both outlined there are escalation measures. We don't go straight to an FPN at times. There might be times when it's suitable to do that, but there's an escalation about advising and so on and so forth before we get there, and discouraging. But it's about having tools available. This isn't the only control, of course, that is being implemented in PIL, and it's not the only method. Or, for example, all regulators have other powers and statutory powers or standalone powers that they can take in isolation or unilaterally outside of a PSPO. What the PSPO does is allow us to focus our attention in one area, allow both regulators to support targeted action as opposed to just relying on one, and play an even more meaningful role. And I mean this sincerely. Newport City Council works very well with Brent Police. The liaison between the community protection manager in particular and the Stephen Evans and others from Brent Police is very, very close. So what this does is it provides additional tools at our disposal. And that's the way I think is best to understand it. I hope that is a clear understanding
Thanks, Chris. I just wanted to elaborate exactly that point, really, because, you know, I think it's difficult for the public when they, Gareth said to it, didn't it? It's difficult for the public when it looks like a league table and then you look at the stats and break it down. And I think it's really, really important just to reinforce that point again, that, you know, it's just another weapon in your armoury, really, and to actually be able to sort of go out there with a bit more confidence that you can do something.
Absolutely, Councillor. With any enforcement, not just within this particular area, any enforcement, there is a crescendo to get to it. And as Gareth has already alluded, if you've had to go to enforcement, the other measures below it haven't worked to a degree. So it is right not to focus on FPNs being the sole outcome of this. They are undoubtedly important, and I don't diminish that importance. But it is a package of tools, and the PSPO is only one package, one tool, and the FPN's out of it, only one tool at dealing with some of the issues in the pit area.
Thanks, Rhys.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Chris Evans.
Aye, thank you. And it's good. I mean, clearly everybody has got the best interests of the community in Pill and the wider Newport at heart. I opened up with some context as regards why I'm reasonably well informed on this, and the fact that I've been contacted and consult with 1 or 2 charities. I think this is a move. One of my problems with PCSOs is that, you know, I'm not sure if they work or not, and they certainly get a good headline, but I'm not sure that they work or not. And I think, for the record, it's important to say that, you know, I believe in decriminalisation, and particularly with sex work. And my personal view is the problem with Pill is that it's a problem of decades of containment. So everybody with a host of unique and special needs and addictions are continually placed in the same area. I think this PCSO, and particularly relating to sex work, is a step towards what's known as the Nordic model in Sweden. And I think it's which originated in Sweden in 1999. And I think it's important for the record to note that Amnesty International opposes this type of legislation and calls for the repeal. Indeed, the UN, the Joint United Nations Programme on HIV and AIDS, UAIDS, also favours the decriminalisation of sex work. So the UN and Amnesty International have very much concerns about this. And some of the feeling, if we were to read the documents, I'm able to share them, is that it merely pushes the problem underground, where people are more likely to be exploited. And indeed, you know, I find it really kind of frustrating from my sort of contact that in Pill, you've probably got 6 to 10 people that work on street corners, and wouldn't it be we could actually change people's lives? And like the charities that have contacted me, I think we should be focusing on helping those individuals and not opening up the possibility of criminalising them. And that's what leads me to my next point, which is the wording in the consultation. Now, I'm going to try to, and I do respect that everybody's doing things with the right intentions, and, you know, I wish I had all of the answers, but I think the wording says, I'm just trying to look, I further, no person shall enter the area, engage. So that's obviously targeting the Nordic model type thing of the punter, as it were, engage. But then it goes on to say, and I don't know if I think it's possibly badly worded, loiter or solicit on the streets. So that a group that's contacted me has said that suggests that there will be an ability to find a young lady or or older lady or chap that is soliciting on the street. And that really does send alarm bells ringing for charities, very respected charities that work in this area, that you might be targeting the person. Broadly, it seems to be a package with the words of like vulnerable person, and that there is some definition about consent in terms of the relationship between the customer and the street worker. And whilst I would consider that to be a form of exploitation, a lot of the thinking that doesn't actually lead to that at the moment. As regards the consultation, so the definition of consent perhaps needs to be looked at, from what I'm told. As regards the consultation, I think it's great to get it out there in the public domain. And I think somebody said earlier, you know, that if people are asked, do you agree with people urinating in the street, then most people are going to say no. But I think we also need to consult with specialist groups, least of all on a local level, people like HCT, who believe we really, really do need to do more to help the people that are working on the streets and not potentially issue them with arbitrary fines. You know, if you've got a £200 a day crack heroin habit and you're faced with a fine, you know, you're not, you're still going to buy your £20 wrap, your, what they call it, white and brown, you know, and you'll end up criminalizing people, you know. So that really just concerns me, and I think we do need to go to specialist groups to seek their view of things, to the extent that New Pathways, Sarah Thomas, who's the head of sexual assault referral services at New Pathways, are really keen to speak to Newport Council and the police. She's offered me a call in order to, you know, give their view on this legislation. They are very concerned about that potential. So, I mean, and when I say I think the problem is containment, I think, you know, for decades we've put all these people in one area and it's almost like a tinderbox, but that's a broader point from this. And the last thing that we want is to drive the problem underground. And, you know, from what I've seen, just really extreme exploitation and trafficking and so on is actually going on off the streets in areas like Pillar and indeed Newport. And, you know, so I'm concerned about the wording. Charities have approached me, and as regards to the consultation, as well as going out to people, I need some reassurances that we will contact people like Amnesty International, the Warwick, definitely New Pathways, and local groups like HCT to seek their view of things, so that we can, if we are to bring this forward, that we can make it as sensitive to the people that are working the streets as possible. I mean, so one fine for one of those people would be one fine too many. You know, they need our help, not for the council to be instigating fines on them. So that's basically what I would like to add. I guess I'm seeking that reassurance from the police, and I think the wording might need clarification. So if somebody is loitering, or as it says, soliciting on the street, is it likely that they could receive a fixed penalty fine?
Can I just come in? Sorry. I take on board, you know, your comments, Chris, and I totally, you know, agree with what you're saying. But I need to just clarify clearly that we are not targeting the sexually exploited females, adults.
If you read it though.
Yeah, it could be a slight, it could be the wording, I'm afraid. Okay, yes, but we've been faced, so I'm really trying, because I get that everybody's got the right thing, but the wording is as such that it sent alarm bells ringing from very, very. Yeah, we're not targeting. We're not targeting the sexually exploited females. Okay. Yeah, we work very closely with we do the op pathway. I'm in very close correspondence with all the agencies who work with these females. We work very closely with them, and we are on the same page where we come and offer support. These women and sometimes males are offered support very, very regularly. We monitor where they go, and I appreciate where you're saying that it's sometimes not street working. They will go into houses, which again I am part of, and again the support that is offered it's constant. You know, we're not leaving them to be vulnerable. We do offer support on every single occasion that we see these girls. With the people that, in relation to the soliciting, we are targeting those who are soliciting for the purposes of, you know, sex, basically, the curb crawlers, for want of a better phrase. That is the people who we are targeting, not the girls or males themselves. I just need to obviously make that clear.
No, I know that. I get that. That is the Nordic model that I referred to in the beginning, and that is what Amnesty International and indeed the UN are against. I said that at the beginning. I accept that is the purpose, and I thank you for conceding that the wording is perhaps bad, because that's what I wanted to draw attention to. I think you did concede that the wording perhaps needed looking at, and that's what I tried to draw attention to, because the wording, as I read it, does suggest that as well as those procuring the services of street workers, then I haven't got the wording up now in front of me, but those loitering or soliciting are there, and I think that needs rewriting before it goes out to consultation to make clear that those soliciting will not be targeted with these orders, because the last thing that we want, as I say, is somebody with that needs help, that has an habit. Most, if not all, the street workers have some sort of an addiction, extreme addiction, and you know, we're merely going to end up criminalising them if they don't pay the fines. So thank you for agreeing that the wording might need looking at, and hopefully we can also agree that we'll take it out to these specialist groups to ensure that we can take on board their feelings and their very well-informed advice. I'm not an expert, but you know, I've sought these people's opinions.
Rhys, did you want to come back on anything on there, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to follow up, support what Gwent Police College just said. This is not targeting the people who are, it's about targeting the people who are looking to exploit others. But the police have covered that better than I can, and I think we've dealt that. In terms of
sorry, the definition of exploit as well is I mean, you have to look at the Crown prosecution definition of exploitation, which is easily sourced, but yeah, I think that wording needs to be carefully used. But no, I understand that you're trying to do the best, and what I'm trying to do is ensure that the worker, that we've conceded that the wording needs looking at, and that's all that I'm trying to achieve at this point. Yeah,
Councillor, understood. Chair, and what I was going to ask of you, Councillor, if you could, you mentioned some specific local consultees. One of the asks of the Scrutiny Committee today is to agree the proposed consultation process and the consultees. If there are people you feel, local organisations who need to be consulted as part of this that are not identified in the appendix, and if that can be fed back through the administration of this meeting, then we can duly act on that and make sure that those parties are included in some way.
And can we look at the wording to make clear that we're not going to be targeting street workers or those loitering?
Yes, we can look at that, Councillor. There was a clear ask in the papers for this about scrutinising that. The ask I have, I suppose, Chair, and to take a steer, is to whether you are content that that can be done and then proceed to consultation, or whether you need to have it back.
Okay, thank you, Rhys, and thank you for all the work you do. And again, just for the record, you know, I don't agree with these things, and I believe in decriminalisation, and there are very, very serious concerns about the Nordic model expressed by the UN and Amnesty International. However, if we're going to go down the road, then we need to, you know, I've got no way of changing this, unfortunately, but we need to ensure that the wording is correct and is clear as to its purpose, and that we consult with the specialists that can perhaps make it better, and that's all that I'm trying to achieve. And thank you everybody for the work that you are doing. I know everybody's got the right intentions, you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Al-Nuami.
Yeah, Chair, before we get bouncing to some of the stuff that is being said by Councillor Evans, we really need to be careful here that everything we do is actually evidence-based. And we've had this order running in Pill for the last 3 years, haven't we? More than 3 years, I think. We've had similar orders in the city centre, and they have done a great deal of improvement in what we used to have. Okay, so they're not perfect. I am willing to take them as preventative measures rather than decriminalizing anybody. I measure their success by me not hearing about problem and complaints from the intimidation and so on that used to happen when there were street drinkers and the like. I know COVID has had its own logic since, you know, and I used to see it, and it's intimidating. I used to go to town or the city centre Saturday afternoon, 2 o'clock, you know, with street drinkers in the high street, in John Frost Square before it became Pride Walk, and it was really intimidating. And I think it has improved a lot. So coming to the order in Pell, whatever we do in terms of the consultation on a new order, it has to be evidence-based. In other words, have we in the last 3 years had, you know, strong evidence that people have been decriminalized, ? Do we have evidence that street workers have been unfairly treated or targeted or whatever? You know, I'm not saying, you know, we stand for the community. We don't make judgment on, obviously, people, whether they sort of go work in the sex industry or not, but we are responsible for people. And there were issues in Pell, and I believe since we've had this order, things have improved in Pell compared to what they used to be. Now, they haven't been 100% effective, but I think they have worked. So before we agree change of wording, I think we need to look at that and we look at the evidence. And I would also trust our legal section, and I'm sort of addressing Gareth there, that whatever we put out there will be consistent in legal terms in terms of the wording for it to go out to consultation. I know they do that. They do that with all kinds of orders, that it goes through the legal section. But I am yet to be convinced, really, of the arguments that's been put that, you know, there is decriminalization, there is intimidation, there is unfair treatment of people. We want to stop antisocial behavior. We don't want to use heavy-handed methods, right? We want the police to have just enough power to prevent situations developing. That is what I believe the order is about. We've had this discussion first time when it was round, and we discussed it in the Scrutiny Committee. And Councillor Evans knows the discussion. I'm happy to accept people's views on this, which is what the consultation is going out. And that was really my point.
Okay. Shall I come back on
I'm still speaking, if you don't mind.
Well,
sorry,
yeah.
if you want to come
Thank you, Chair. No, let's be clear.
Sorry, Chris. I just said, can we, Chris? Sorry, can we let Councillor Anuwami finish what you were saying, please?
Of course, I thought he had finished. I do apologise, Chair.
Do you want me to finish, Chair?
Yes, if you could, yeah, please.
No, if you finish, Councillor Anuwami, you finish. But if you've got more to say, please continue. I'm not stopping you from finishing here.
Yeah, I just let me look at the minutes. I've lost them here. Yeah. In terms of the consultation, I mean, I notice it's really Appendix 4 I'm addressing, which is on the consultation. And you know that there's been an issue with us in terms of various consultations, and we need to get better and better and involve more and more people so that we get informed of, you know, the views, well, a wide section of the community as wide as possible. So I notice most of that is done as a questionnaire again, which is fair enough. I suppose that's at least it's going to get us some views. I am pleased to see actually that we are identifying a meeting perhaps within COVID, a possible physical meeting within the consultation period. And it is actually identifying Safer Pell steering group. My question is how representative that group is of the communities in Pell And does it also have, things like charities, things like businesses, as well as sort of community groups in it? Can someone clarify what that group is and how widely representative that group is? Thank you.
Chair, before we clarify that,
Sorry.
clarify that, can I just answer one of the points that McDad made when he referred to me? Is that okay?
Of course.
I apologise for the fact that McDad perceives that I'm trying to bounce anybody. I'm not. This is a scrutiny committee, and what we do is scrutinise. And what I'm trying to do is to make the wording better to ensure that it protects the most vulnerable. If McDad, I'm sure he has read the papers probably, he would know that the powers as regards street workers and or the customers are a new addition and weren't in the previous documents, and I'm sure McDad will obviously be aware of that. So hence the fact that I spoke to that. My comments have been informed, one by personal experience, but by two by specialist groups that work in the area, and that's why I suggested that we consult with these particular groups. I am merely trying to make it better. McDad, I believe, used the wrong terminology. He said that we were decriminalising. We're not doing that. My personal view is that we should decriminalise. That's my personal view. But that isn't what this does. This actually potentially leads to criminalisation, in my view, not the charity's views that I've tried to express. So that's basically it. As I said, I'm sure McDad is aware that around street work, these are additional additions to the order that weren't in the original, and that's why I spoke specifically to those from an informed point of view. I'm really sorry if I didn't make myself clear. And what I'm trying to do is make it better and to ensure that those that are the most vulnerable are protected, regardless of my personal views. Okay.
Well, then it is, sorry, it's a question for the consultation, which is why I think I'm interested in the answer to the question I raised. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for conceding that you may have been wrong.
Thank you both. Rhys, did you want to come back on the consultation question from McDad, from Councillor Anawami, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. The groups we've identified are community groups. So we've got the Safer Pill Working Group and then the Community Steering Group. The Community Steering Group is chaired by a Gwent Police Inspector and is made up of a variety of businesses and community leaders. I have not attended that meeting myself. There may be colleagues around this meeting who have a better or wider understanding of the people who make up that group. If there are additional groups that you feel that need to be included in the consultation specifically, we're happy to hear that, councillors.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back on that, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important, though, isn't it, that we do, sort of satisfy ourselves. We are consulting with a wide group of people in the community there. And I think business is also involved in this, because I've had complaints from businesses about what they call, street walkers and curb crawlers and that sort of thing. And it is a place that we've actually invested quite a lot of money in, to make it look good, to make it look attractive, to make it look welcoming for both residents, communities, and also visitors. It's a very interesting area. And we've worked hard over the years to try and make it welcoming for everybody. So I think really it's important that if we do in this consultation, we include also businesses. We also include, not just sort of, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's always a vociferous of groups that try maybe to, set the agenda. But I think we need to listen to the quiet ones as well, who are also affected by this. And really, this is what I am looking for in terms of the consultation. We need to satisfy ourselves when it comes back to us that we have really tried to reach out and engage as wide as possible within the ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Naomi. Councillor Ferris.
Yeah, well, a question and a comment, effectively. If you drive down by the side of the Westgate and look up the High Street and down Commercial Street nowadays, you barely see a soul about. And of course, for begging to function, you need a number of people going past that you can beg from. But at least down in Pill, there is some movement and there is some life. And I wonder really if maybe all we've succeeded in doing is moving the problems of the town centre south down into Pill as regards begging and as regards drinking. I wonder again with the street prostitution, are we giving the curb crawlers something of a choice? If, say, they get caught by the police, they then end up with a criminal record, wouldn't they? And that could have disastrous effects on their marriage and on their career. If they've got, say, the option, if they've got the softer option of a fixed penalty notice, they pay the fine and nobody knows anything else. I wonder if there's an element of, yeah, you know, disparity in the tariff that they have to pay for that misdeed. I would think again, really, as regards the punters or curb crawlers, it does come under compulsive behaviour. It's another form of addiction as well. So I think in this situation there are no baddies, there are no goodies, and some individuals are excited by the risk that this sort of action poses. Just my thoughts there, but I'd be interested to know if they've got the option of a fixed penalty notice, that leaves them without a record, and that really would be better than having a record for them, better than having a record, would it? Is this just that we're doing that? Surely a penalty should be a penalty.
Can somebody come back on that for Councillor Ferris, please?
No.
Yeah, there are obviously penalties for persons who are caught soliciting in that area. You make a good point, Mr. Ferris, that a fixed penalty. It is a tool that can be used. It can be used as a deterrent, which would stop people from attending the area in the first place if they're going to get a £100 fine. They can also be dealt with by ourselves and get the criminal record that you've suggested there. You know, that has been done. There's been large operations have gone on in the area where that has happened. But yeah, it has happened. It happens with shoplifting. The same sort of thing. The same processes are in place for that as well.
Could just to reinforce that point, Chair, I don't think it's a fixed penalty shouldn't be seen as a soft option. As Reese has said, and the police, this is an additional tool in terms of the armoury of the police and the wardens in terms of enforcement. This is about early intervention and prevention. The idea with the fixed penalty is that you actually deal with this, you nip it in the bud before it escalates into becoming more of a criminal problem. So the idea is not to give curb crawlers a soft option of paying a fine and avoiding a criminal conviction. It's actually to stop it happening in the first place, and to give the police primarily additional powers to actually step in earlier to prevent people from travelling into the area to cause this sort of problem in the first place. So it's an addition to the criminal powers rather than something that's an alternative or instead of the criminal convictions.
Mm-hmm. It does lead to a dilution really of the offence. In my opinion, you know, if on the one hand, yeah, pay your 100 quid and shove off, as opposed to, you know, get your criminal conviction. I don't know. I think there's a bit of a moral issue there, but there again, well, you know, just more, the day I start worrying about morals, that'll be a strange day.
Thank you, Councillor Ferris. Was there somebody coming back in on that comment then? No. Okay, Councillor Fawzi.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to go back to the question of how many fines have been issued. So looking at Appendix 2, and if my arithmetic is correct, then that's 211 fines over 3 years, 70 per year, just slightly more than 1 a week. So to me, this seems like a measured use. It's not, obviously issuing a fine is not the primary purpose, as already been mentioned, but I think that seems like a useful measure to me, and a measured use of these powers. The other comment that I'd like to make is that I think it's really important to note that the councillors from the area fully support this measure, and these are the councillors who live and work in the area, and they represent the residents of the area, and they've been elected to represent the residents in the area. So I think it's really important that we put weight on what the councillors for Pale have said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forsey. And I agree with what you're saying there. We've had strong push from the Peel councillors to, that this is they're desperate for this to come back into force, really. Councillor Evans, Matthew Evans, got another comment from yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. For once, I'm actually going to agree with Councillor Forsey. I have done a lot of litter picks over the years in Peel, and it's still got many serious issues. And we can debate all we like about the merits of legalisation, decriminalisation, whatever you like, but ultimately that's not up to us. And I do think it's important. My residents will say to me, we want more fines for dog fouling and litter picking, because it's an issue which affects the residents around here. So actually, sometimes I do think it's important that we fine people. Different circumstances, admittedly, in Peel, but we do need to recognise the people who live and work down there. And if we want confidence and investment, ultimately, it should be the residents down there. Rehab issues, homeless issues are separate issues, and I think which need to be addressed. But we can't expect 16-year-old girls to walk past on the way to school to be approached by somebody. So we need to ensure that we separate these issues. So, there are different ways of looking at it, but ultimately, and I do know people who live and work down there, and I do know it's unacceptable when you see them openly drug taking in the middle of a street in broad daylight. And residents have got to look at that, and kids have got to look at that. Now, we can't solve all the problems. We have organisations which should be doing that, but we need to listen to the views of the residents and public. And the other ones, essentially is a different debate for a different audience.
Thanks, Matthew. If I can just ask one more question, and it's a high level. It's regarding the consultation. Obviously this has gone out to consultation previously when we first implemented the PSPO in Peel. What was the response on the consultation from the public on that one, and what are we expecting to get back? And I appreciate it's important that we do go to these groups, because notoriously when we put things out we don't get a lot of response. So I'm just wondering, what are we expecting back on this one, and the general sort of cut of the public on this when it goes out? If I can just ask that, please.
Chair, I'll do my best to respond to that one. I've spoken to our engagement teams within the council about how best to engage at the moment. The feedback I've had is that some of the previous methods used for other consultations, not just limited PSPOs, are lower in number because of people not being out and about as much, engagement events not happening, which is why we invite Scrutiny to look at the process we've outlined. And I think it's relevant to identify that two councillors now have indicated specific local community groups, and I think it's worth reflecting that this is a Peel proposal. So local groups, I think, are very important to consider, and if you can get names or individuals or organisations, preferably, that need to be consulted on to drive up response and therefore engagement and buy-in and relevance, then we're happy to hear them, because we can tailor that if necessary.
Thank you for that, Rhys. Thank you. Yvonne, did you want to come back on something regarding the consultation?
Yes, please. On page 20, as a questionnaire, it says, are you a resident of Pill? But I think that question needs to be enhanced a little bit to say, are you a resident of Newport, or are you from outside of Newport? Are you an individual, or are you representing an organisation? If so, which one? Are you representing a charity? If so, which one? Or are you representing a business? So I think that question needs to be developed a little bit to capture some of the other points that I think we need to know about. You know, if somebody's not within Newport, it needs to be given a different weight to, as you say, the residents of Pill and the residents of Newport. It's distinct categories, and we ought to capture that, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a valid point also there. OK, I don't seem to have any further indications to comment or ask questions. So if that's the case, then I suggest that we thank Rhys and thank Sergeant Priest and Councillor Hyatt and Claire for attending the meeting. Obviously, we'll make a conclusion at the end and pass it and report back. But I'd like to thank you for your time and move on to the next agenda item, if I may.
Well, I did my bit, didn't I? Okay.
Can I just ask who we've got presenting? Is it Rhys for the next Rhys Cornwall for the next agenda item?
It is me, Chair.
Hi, Rhys. Thank you. Can I hand it over to you?
Yeah, you've had a bumper morning. You've had both the Rhyses that work for Newport City Council, one after the other. Okay, thanks very much. So there's quite a lot of information's been sent in today, so I'll do my best to try and do a brief overview, Chair, and then take any questions that might come up as a result of that. And just with some contextualization, really. So obviously, as we're all aware at the moment, the world has massively changed for us. Ordinarily, we'd be in a committee room at the moment in the city centre having this conversation, and you know, this debate around issues being brought forward to scrutiny. At the moment, we're doing that via a variety of online mechanisms. So obviously, as an organisation, we've changed massively how we go about our business. From the political side of it, but also from the operations of the organisation. Now, there's some caveats with that. Obviously, our frontline delivery, whilst it's been enhanced and has obviously been operating in COVID restricted ways, has by and large been required to continue. So we've still delivered social care, social services activity. We've still delivered city services activities. We've still done things like planning, etc. So quite a lot of the organisation has continued. Our schools have by and large been open throughout the pandemic, and that's either been delivering education as normal or as hubs for childcare, for key workers, etc. So quite a lot of the organisation has continued to operate, but in different ways. But actually, we've learned that we can operate quite a few other things without bringing people into a specific location on a daily basis. So this paper tries to bring together some of the thoughts around that. So what we look at there is the situation we had prior to the 23rd of March last year when we went into lockdown. It's hard to believe that we're almost 12 months on, or 11 months on from that date. And the changes we put in place when we went into lockdown so that we could continue to operate, some of the drivers that might be pushing us in the direction of making some changes, some of the opportunities that exist as a result of that, and then some of the challenges that we need to face and overcome as an organisation, and as both the political operation of the organisation, but also the delivery of services as well. Really, so basically the purpose of bringing this for scrutiny is the start of that conversation. My anticipation is that we will not be returning to a normal situation for a number of months. The vaccination programme is going incredibly well, as you'd have seen on the news, and that's happening in Newport City Council is supporting health and other partners in delivery of that across Newport. And Reese's team has been, I think he's dropped off the call now, has been incredibly effective at dealing with the contact tracing side of this through environmental health as well. So, you know, lots of officers and operating across Newport delivering those activities. But we've got a period of time now to look at what Newport City Council is going to look like when this is over, because it will be over at some point. Whether that's in 3 or 6 months' time, you know, we will get to a point where normality will resume. And we need to determine now what that is going to look like and feel like for us as an organisation. So as I said, this is the start of a conversation. We've obviously lots of questionnaires, lots of conversations with staff have been going on during the pandemic. And we've made changes as a result of things that staff have said to us, and we'll continue that. So obviously we're interested in the views of Scrutiny, but we're also really interested in the views of our staff as well, and some of those are expressed within the report to date, and we'll be doing some more work at that. And my anticipation is then that we'll bring this together in order to report to Cabinet at some point over the next 3 to 6 months on actually what's our operational model going to look like, and what changes there might need to be to the way we employ staff and support staff, etc., in order to do that. Would it be beneficial, Chair, for me to just run through very quickly some of the information that's in the report?
Yeah, happy to if you can.
Yeah, okay. So it starts off looking at the situation we were in when we went into lockdown. So, and I think broadly, I would just say that Newport was in a reasonably healthy position. So when on the 23rd, I think it was a Tuesday evening, the Prime Minister put us into a lockdown situation. The requirement was anybody could work from home should be working from home. By that Friday, we had 1,200 people working from home, online on our systems. And the reason we were able to do that quickly were a few things. One is we had a very high proportion of laptops in the organisation as part of our agile working policy and work we've done for Modernised Council. So obviously all members have a laptop and an iPad. Most of our staff, about 85% of our PC fleet was laptops on the 23rd of March. So we were in a pretty good position for that. We just implemented Office 365, which basically took all our email systems up into the cloud. So that made it easy to access that, and it obviously came along with Teams as well. I'll talk a little bit more about Teams as part of that, as our package. And we already had a mobility solution in place. And if I just explain what that is, so NetMotion is a system we have licensed for within the organisation. Essentially allows you remote, secure access to all our systems. So operating remotely as if you were in our buildings, plugged hardwired into our network. So we already had that in place. Lots of other organisations didn't have that. So we were in I think a pretty good position as far as some of those things were concerned. I would also been working on a programme of modernising our HR systems as well. So actually things like pay slips and mileage and check-ins were already part of that. So those could be done remotely. So we've done some more work on that. So we're in a reasonably good position to be able to work remotely. And one of the conversations you might want to have this morning is about, but why didn't we do more remote working prior to the lockdown? Because it was pretty sparse across the organisation. Some of the changes we've made, obviously we've been working on a strategic recovery aims. It's reported through Cabinet on a monthly basis. So the sort of things we're trying to develop and push forward with. Obviously we had to make some changes to their IT infrastructure. There were some people who didn't have laptops. We had to do some things around that. We did have some staff who didn't have licenses for Office 365 or NetMotion, so we had to invest in some more of that. Obviously we're asking staff to work from home. We've had to go through a process of ensuring that their work environment is safe. So there's been a home workstation assessment in place and an investment in kits for people to work from home efficiently and effectively and safely. That's the most important word there, and being safe to do that. We have still got staff operating out of buildings. We've still got staff delivering frontline services, and obviously making sure they can deliver that safely is critically important as well. So if you take the Civic Centre, we've probably got about 90 staff attending the Civic Centre on a daily basis. And they are primarily social services. Obviously, there are general operatives there as well. There are some reception staff because members of the public do still attend there, and they do need to have somebody to give them some direction. And with things like document services, mailroom, etc. Obviously, that functionality, there's nowhere else we can really put that. It's quite big machinery, so those staff are still within the Civic Centre. So we've still got staff there, and obviously we need to maintain a safe environment for them, which is again one of the reasons why we've said to members and other staff, if you can work from home, because the fewer people we have in those buildings, the better at the moment. So we've done some things in order to make sure that people can work more safely. We've also had to make some changes to some of our policies as well, and probably the biggest changes we made have been around flexi and overtime payments. And if I just explain that, because that's on regular review. So what we've said to staff working from home, and you know, staff are working in a variety of circumstances, often homeschooling, caring for elderly relatives, trying to deal with the stresses and the strains of an ongoing lockdown. What we've said is the outputs are the important things rather than the time you spent in front of a computer, you know. So actually we'll be flexible if you'll be flexible, and staff have embraced that and have been incredibly good. It wouldn't be appropriate, right, or actually help with the ongoing operations of the organisation if we had a flexi process in place then as well, because we want to be flexible. We don't need people accruing flexible time off. So we've suspended that. What that's meant though for frontline operational services is obviously if they've had to deliver additional hours, we've actually been paying overtime as a result of that. Okay, so they are not staff are not out of pocket for a result of doing that. They're getting paid overtime, and obviously in order to ensure that we've got the appropriate numbers and to recognise the efforts of staff are putting in there, we've made some changes to that overtime rate as well on a temporary basis. Health and safety team have been critical within this, as lots of other staff groups have been critical throughout the pandemic. They've done lots of work with both schools, our frontline delivery services, our buildings, really about making sure we can operate in a COVID safe environment. But that's also extended then to people working from home. So obviously we've had to make sure that people are in a safe working environment when they're at home as well. And that's more problematic, obviously, because we're doing it at distance. There are a number of drivers for change, and I won't spend ages talking about this because they're detailed within the report. But you know, we as other public sector bodies have got some unique challenges, and they are lots of those are related to the assets we've got, the buildings we operate, and how we operate, and we afford to operate them, and we maximise the usage of them as well. So in the report, you will see one of the appendices is some data that was done a couple of years ago on utilisation of the Civic Centre, which you will see was pretty low pre-pandemic. And that's because we've got significantly less staff than we used to have, and that's because of reduction in services, but also changes to operating models. So, you know, staff no longer employed by us, are employed by other organisations. So, you know, not massive utilisation anyway, but obviously pandemic is now giving us some opportunities and some challenges that we need to overcome as far as assets are concerned. One of the big one is around climate change and carbon reduction. And just a little bit of data in there, which is around staff mileage. So this is mileage claimed by staff who are driving for work purposes. So this is not commuting to and from work, this is driving for work purposes. We've got a pretty low staff mileage claim anyway, compared to other local authorities. but you know, you will see the difference between April to August 2019 and April to August 2020 as two comparable timescales there. What that does is have a knock-on effect for carbon reduction, congestion around the city. I'll mention this because two warm members from Altrein are in the Scrutiny Committee, you know, will be well aware of some of the parking issues we have around the Civic Centre as well, which, you know, are no small thing as well for the residents around the Civic Centre. And then there's also this commitment from Welsh Government around 30% of Welsh workers working from home. So, you know, there's some pressures, I suppose, and some drivers in there for us to change. We now know we're not getting the M4 relief road around Newport, so actually, you know, anything we can do in order to stop people driving into the city centre when not needed is really helpful. It also helps with some recruitment. Recruitment is a double-edged sword with this. We are recruiting staff. You know, we are doing onboarding virtually for staff through our new HR system. But obviously there are limitations there. You know, how do you bring people into an organisation and instill our organisational culture with them? How do you lead them? How do you train them and induct them into a team? And we've got mechanisms in place for doing that. But there are challenges around doing some of those things. However, it also enables us to look to recruit other staff that we might not have been able to attract before. Because actually, the opportunity of being able to work from home and undertake a job is quite attractive to lots of people who weren't in the workforce, weren't in the labour market to start with. So actually, we're attracting different sorts of people, or the ability to attract different sorts of people back into the workforce. We've got obviously changing demands around our IT infrastructure. So the link in the report to the Cabinet report, but just very, very briefly, just to say, obviously we've joined Shared Resource Services, which is a partnership of 4 local authorities and Gwent Police to deliver IT services across Gwent, not including Caerphilly. They're currently where their server farm is in Blaenavon. The Cabinet report talks about that moving. It will be moving to a new location starting this year. Our servers are primarily, we have backup systems up in Blaenavon, but our servers primarily live in the Civic Centre. The Cabinet report talks about the benefits of moving out of the Civic Centre for resilience, security, etc., but also energy consumption, because about half the energy consumption of the Civic Centre are the server rooms, and that's between power going into the servers, but also cooling systems. So there's some opportunities there. And then we have some real opportunities about different ways in which we use the buildings we've got. Now, I've already talked about some of the space around the Civic Centre. Are there commercial opportunities? Are there community opportunities? Are there other operational opportunities we've got around using some of those buildings in different ways if we've got less staff in less often? Caveat with that is, under current restrictions, what we wouldn't look to do is bring people back into a situation where they were desk sharing, because obviously if somebody was coming into an office, we want them to stay on the same desk every time they're in that office, because actually that reduces your infection rate. There's a heightened cleansing regime in place, but those things are really important as well. Okay, so if we're talking post-COVID, we've also got some opportunities around some of that as well. So look, there's some real opportunities, I think, with us looking at how we do things differently. Also, a lot of opportunities around work-life balance as well for staff, and I'll say that as somebody who's got two younger children. Whilst it's quite challenging doing homeschooling and working, also there are benefits also around sort of transport to school, etc. Clubs being there for them when they come home from school. There's some real work-life balance opportunities in this, and plus that staff have may have care and responsibilities, etc. So being able to work in a more flexible way, obviously, is really useful. Challenges. We will continue to have some challenges around any changes that we make. There are 5 key things, and I'm sure there are other challenges as well. Staff and member well-being, I'll start off with that one because that was probably the one that's highest up in my mind at the moment. Obviously, we've had this fed back through staff services we've been doing, well-being surveys that we're doing as well with staff. That, and I'm sure this equally applies to members. You would have seen recently I sent out some information to all members about support that's available. You know, coming into the workplace and working with your colleagues on a daily basis brings more advantages than just coming into work. You know, there is a social element to it, there's a support element to it as well, and that is by and large gone as a result of working at home, if you're working from home full time. So personally, I'm not an advocate of us going to a model where we had numbers of staff working from 100%. I think we probably need something in between that. So there's a real staff well-being issue there. There's potentially an issue around service accessibility. So I'm not talking about frontline services. I'm talking about people being able to respond to things that they need to respond to. And we've had some technical issues with some of that, but I think those are things that we can overcome. The organisational culture issues, I think when I talk about the situation we were in prior to lockdown and our ability to be working flexibly, at that point, actually, it's the cultural side of it is the thing that holds you back. Now, other organisations have moved to situations where they've implemented agile, flexible, smarter working principles prior to us, and the driver they've had is space. You know, if you've got 500 people who attend a building and then you move to a building that will only accommodate 100 people on a desk sharing basis, then you have the driver to get people to work flexibly from home or flexibly from a variety of locations. We haven't got that issue, as the information in the report describes about how much space we've actually got in the Civic Centre. And you just take the Civic Centre as one of our buildings. So look, we've never had that pressure. What COVID has done, if there's any benefits to COVID, what it has done is to show us organisationally that we can operate in a different way. So, you know, there are cultural issues there, but I think they are ones we can overcome. There's also, as a council, we've got a wider obligation to the City of Newport as well. So obviously, when lockdown restrictions are over and the city centre can open up again, you know, we want it to be thriving. We want people to be there. Some of those people include our workforce. If we've got less people in the building, there's a potential for having an impact there. However, what I would say is if you go back to the information we provided about staff utilising the building, on any given day, there's not a huge number of people in the Civic Centre anyway. There's also some information we provided about proximity to the city centre where our staff live. So actually, I think there's a counter argument there, which is, well, actually, if you're giving people more flexibility in the way they deploy their hours during the day, and they're able to work from a variety of locations, including the Civic Centre or home, actually, there's probably some encouragement in there for them to utilise the Civic Centre. I think over about half, looking at the data, about half our staff live within a mile of the city centre, which is a pretty high figure. So there's definitely some challenges there. And when we're looking at future operating model, as I said, if I was going to pitch this anyway, it would be somewhere along a continuum, you know, and on one end of the continuum is we go back to the way we were. And the other end of that is actually 100%, some staff 100% home working. I think we're somewhere along that where we've got a flexible model. Now, some of the other things probably to consider is from a member's point of view, the Local Government and Elections Act now, and when that gets fully enacted, this utilisation of hybrid meetings. So, you know, that's part of the Act. There is a situation in which you could be having a committee meeting where some of you are in a committee room in the Civic Centre and some of you are elsewhere, accessing it remotely, because actually some of this flexibility obviously equally applies to members. And that then enables members who may be on full-time employment, etc., or people who are in full-time employment, putting their hat into the ring to become elected members and represent their communities in the future. We've put right at the beginning of lockdown, we were already in the process of doing it. We've put those facilities into the Civic Centre. So we have got the capabilities at the moment to run hybrid meetings if we need to do that. So that's one of the things we can start looking at. Also in the report, added on, there was a lot of information in there. Also in the report is the report 1 from the Work After Lockdown study. So the Work After Lockdown study started right at the beginning of it. Institute for Employment, University of Southampton. There's some other organisations involved in it as well. It references 2 local authorities, one in England, one in Wales, who are part of that study, plus some private sector organisations. We are the Welsh local authority that was part of that study. So we put our hat into the ring right at the beginning because we wanted to be part of that learning about actually what are the benefits, disbenefits, what are the things you need to consider, etc. as a result of that. And in that report, I'm just going to flick over to that. Just to highlight, I think it's on page 22 of that report. Just bear with me for a second. There's some conclusions on page 22 of that. And the first one is people have adapted it quickly and worked well from home. Productivity is good. And that would certainly echo what our experience has been with Newport. Our staff have been incredibly flexible, incredibly positive. And actually, you know, we probably got more issues with staff doing too much than not enough. Okay, so, you know, that's my general assessment, and that's come out in that report from other organisations as well. Employees do miss the sociability and benefits of collaboration offered by working in shared workspaces. And one of the things we've been looking at is actually the staff historically who would have required office space are probably the ones who least require the office space. So staff undertaking transactional process type activities, it's generally online on a cloud-based system at the moment. So, you know, that can be done pretty much from anywhere. It's staff who need to collaborate, the ones you probably need to bring together them more often. Employees feel that they've benefited from flexibility to the organisational tasks and discretion to make decisions about when and how they work from home. And again, that has come through. But again, you'll see in some of the comments in the report from staff about this, we need to get better at this demarcation between when work ends and starts, because people tend to carry on through the evenings and at the weekend. There's some reference in the report as well about this opening at some latent demand in the labour market from people who didn't feel that the work environment, they were able to re-enter the work environment because of other commitments they had in their lives, either to children or the people they're caring for. Definitely something we've identified organisationally. Gaps remain in training around leadership, management, supervision remotely. It's more of a challenge than doing it face to face. And there's some recognition in there as well around the flexibility and discretion coupled with a new relationship of trust between employer and home working employee, the foundation components of good work. So this actually, when you look at culture, one of the big things, it won't just apply to Newport City Council, but lots of organisations now realise that staff working from home work, you know, and I think that was probably one of the issues that was in place prior to that. So look, there's a lot of information in there, Chair. It was very much a whistle-stop tour of it. And really, this, as I said, the start of a conversation with Scrutiny and with staff really about what we want Newport to look like at the end of this. So welcome comments or questions.
Thanks, Rhys. So a comment from myself is, you know, it's a really good report. It's a really comprehensive, and I think it covers a lot of areas. And as you said, there's some positives that have come from this, where people that maybe previously in the past couldn't work for certain reasons, for health reasons and different things, can now be brought back into the workforce, and that's opening up a whole new pool of employees that for no fault of their own couldn't get to an office physically, but we can do that. One thing I think that I like to be aware of, or something in the report, is that I know not everybody likes to work from home. As great as it is, you know, I work from home 100% now. Since COVID, I've been made a permanent home worker, which, to be honest, I'm not particularly keen about. It's nice, as you said, it's nice to go into the office a few times a week, but there are some people who don't like working from home and don't want to work from home. So, you know, it'd be good that we make sure that, you know, we've still got that cover for these people to say that, you know, even though it's there, you can come into the office full time, you know, because we don't want to exclude people then from that side of things, because they might not have a home environment that is conducive to work from home. And just another question, obviously, if we're moving to agile working, then is that a change to everybody's contract? Then are we going to be looking at rolling out new employee contracts because of this? You know, I'm guessing the contract would say, would name a place of employment and hours, as you said, 9 to 5, which it would be. I know I don't always work 9 to 5. I sometimes work at 7, go off for an hour, work again. But as you said, it's not about the time spent in front of the computer. It's about that thing. So are we looking at then a mass change to the employee contract and things? And you know, is that going to be a problem getting that in? But otherwise, you know, I welcome this from my point of view as an elected member. The hybrid meetings will exceptionally work for me. You know, and it's going to be a good thing. And again, elected members who will want to be physically in the Civic Centre. We already know that there are a number of people who want to be in there for technical issues, or, you know, for all sorts of reasons. So it's, you know, the hybrid way of working is going to be most welcome from my side of things. But my main one was more on the contractual changes for our employees, really.
Okay. I'll take the first one first, though. So what you're absolutely right. Not everybody. Home working doesn't suit everybody. Again, probably one of the reasons why I think where I would pitch myself within this is something which was more of a hybrid model, where you were able to work from home. You were probably encouraged to work from home a number of days a week. We have been really clear with staff. I'll cover this off as part of the contracts, but the remuneration as well within this. We've been clear with staff. If staff have got any well-being and welfare issues, they need to talk to their line manager. If that requires us bringing them into a workspace, we'll bring them into a workspace, but we'll just do that safely. All right. So, you know, there are all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it isn't just a preference reason. It could be because actually working from home, and I think there's some reference in the working after lockdown report as well. And certainly in some of our staff feedback, you know, if you're in a shared space, working from home is not really easy. There is a financial impact from working from home. So within the report, it does talk about the fact that we'd have carbon reduction as an organisation. We've reduced energy consumption as an organisation. We've passed some of that on because people are working from home during the winter. They've had heating on, they've used more electricity, etc. So we've passed some of that on. So I, you know, absolutely take on board your point. I wouldn't advocate being in a position where we insisted that somebody work from home 5 days a week as part of their job. I think we would probably in a situation where we'd want them to work from home for a period of time, but that's one of the things we'd have to come over. The question about contracts then is, at the moment our contract is pretty flexible. It doesn't really designate a place of work anyway, because actually Newport is a fairly compact geographical area, and we might require somebody to work in a number of locations across that geographical area. So we're not really fixated on you are employed to work in the Civic Centre. However, if we required staff to work from home for a period of time during the week, we would have to look at the contracts around that. And actually, if this is an ongoing situation, we'd also have to look at some of the remuneration around that. So there's a small amount of tax relief available to people from working from home. But actually, we would really need to consider, if we were requiring somebody to work from home, what that actually meant as far as us contributing to things like, you know, their energy, their broadband, etc. So there's a lot of considerations in there, but they will very much depend on where organisationally we'll pitch ourselves. And that might be different for different staff as well. Is that okay as an answer? As I said, it's only part of an answer, because I think we have to get to the end of that decision process before we think, well, actually, does this mean a significant change to contracts? And actually, does that mean renegotiating those contracts? Employee Partnership Forum was a couple of weeks ago, which is obviously the cabinet member meets with the trade unions and chief officers, and us holding on to this flexibility is one of the issues raised by some of the unions there as well. So they're keen for us to make this work. So I think, you know, as long as we do that as part of a collaboration, we should be okay.
Okay, thank you. And just another question, and then I'll open the floor to the other questions. So I'm guessing there would be a training need for the managers and line managers on this one in how to deal with home working staff. And again, sorry, I keep going into my own experience, but what we do now is we have a quarterly team meet, once every 2 weeks team meeting via WebEx, which is a system that we use, or Teams. So you get a video call where you get to see each other and you get to catch up, and also the same sort of thing that every now and again we have a virtual pub meeting and things like that, just to bring in that side of things, as you said. So, but this is something that's come from years for me of working in this way. You know, on a weekly basis, we get aware about sheets sent to say who's where and where they are, so we always know that if somebody's in the office or travelling or off, because that's the other thing as well, isn't it? That if you've got annual leave booked and you're working from home, people don't necessarily know that anymore, and could be on the phone to you. You know, where are, you know, and you do feel that obligation sometimes to answer, because people don't necessarily know you're not home.
Yeah.
You know, I'm on annual leave for my job. I'm on annual leave today, but I'm obviously on this because it's a separate thing. But I will, and there's got to be that way, isn't there, of sending out a whereabouts sheet to your team to say who's where, what they're doing, and as you said, people do tend to work more because you feel like, oh, they're not going to think I'm working if I don't answer this call right now, or I don't do what I'm doing right now. So I think, you know, I guess there's going to be some sort of training run out for managers and line managers in how to deal with. Well, I'd hope there is something that we can run out for how to deal with your agile staff, really.
Yeah,
just a comment, really.
Sorry, Chair. The reason I was laughing, I'm on leave this week. It hasn't felt like, but I'm on leave this week. I work pretty much every day this week, but yeah, not full on, but yeah, it's a challenge. I think we've sent some guidance out through managers, and we've sent information out through staff news, basically, you know, saying things like, and it might sound strange, but saying things like, you know, not every meeting has got to be a work meeting. It's fine for you to, you know, get your team together and, you know, and yeah, you can do a quiz of a Friday evening if you want, or you know, we tend, I've two management meetings, because obviously it's significantly related to what's happening with COVID and the pandemic at the moment. We have 2 management meetings a week, and it's about half an hour of business and then about 15 minutes of just having a chat to make sure everybody's okay. Those are things to be encouraged. One of the big things we need to train people on is discipline. All right, because you have to be, if you're working from home, you have to be disciplined while you do it. And I don't mean, all right, you're paid to work 7.24 hours a day, you have to do that. I mean, actually do it working and then stopping work. Because you see, we have lots of comments back, and I think it's in the report, your laptop sat in the corner of the room, you just turn it on, you know, it'll be 8 o'clock at night, you turn it on, you've had half a dozen emails, and you start responding to emails, and you get embroiled in stuff. I'm trialing something through our new system, which puts it onto because I've got a works phone, I've got my own personal phone, I've got my phone, works office phone through to my personal phone, and I've now got it through company portal, which is something we're trialing at the moment, about sort of accessing some systems through any devices, and I've got that. So I've got emails pinging all the time, and you just end up getting sucked into it. And you know, discipline, and trying to instill in people, you don't feel bad to turn it off. You need time away. So again, I'll finish that by off saying, by our staff, and I know every scrutiny committee I've gone to since the pandemic has started, members have said this, but I'll say our staff have been incredible. You know, frontline delivery and back office staff, the stuff they've done, you know, they've really pulled it out of the bag. We haven't got a large staff group, We're very compact as an organisation, so a lot of it's been a challenge, and they've been absolutely brilliant. And now we need them to look after themselves a bit as well.
Thank you, Rhys. Thank you. So I've opened the floor. So I've got Councillor Anwami who indicated to speak.
Yeah, come in. Yeah. You know, it was inspirational to see this report. You know, for the first time, it's not one we're looking at sort of performance, figures, details. It's actually, I would say, it's a bit like blue skies. You know, maybe I'm giving it sort of a grander title than what it is, because it's not just really a council issue, is it? It's going to be a life issue. You know, I mean, we're going to be influenced by what government does, by what local authorities do elsewhere, in whatever model we're going to adopt. I mean, initially now, you know, it was forced on us. COVID forced on us what we are doing now. And I have to say, we have kind of coped and coped well. And I think, you know, home working has been maybe quite a novelty with a lot of people, and they felt that maybe they've got more control over how they work, and they probably deliver a lot better than, you know, when you normally come to the Civic and all that. So, you know, I mean, all that is positive. I think another positive thing, you know, the environmental gain, really, you know, we're not driving so many miles. We're not, you know, sort of spending resources on heating workplaces and all that kind of thing. So, I mean, we're benefiting, but let's not forget, really, at the same time, there are issues. I would call them challenging, but they could be negative as well. You know, we have to be careful. We are social beings. And I think a lot of us used to enjoy going to work and having the interaction with our colleagues and all that, and having maybe a cup of tea at a break time or at a sandwich at lunchtime and so on. It's, for example, good to see. I mean, I often see, you know, people trundling on from the Civic Centre into the city centre, you know, for whatever they're doing, whether it's a bank, whether it's just, you know, giving themselves an hour in the fresh air or whatever. And all that is business for other people, you know, hospitality industry, independent shops, you know, all that relied really on us doing that. And I mean, I see sometimes on social media, people sort of so nostalgic at what the high street used to look like in the 1960s, 1970s. And it's very bustling. And it's not the same anymore, you know. And we need to be careful, really. We don't have the same situation as we have with sort of online buying and what has done to our retail, and therefore our sort of lifestyle and all that we don't sort of, you know, walk willingly, if you like, into a situation where we can only see advantages because it's saving money, it's saving buildings, it's saving stuff maybe, but at the same time it's doing really a wider sort of damage to the society as a whole. I mean, what's going to become of our buildings? What's going to become of our shops? You know, if we all work at home, really? I mean, I was thinking, really, do you need to buy so many clothes anymore? Because, I mean, where do you actually see other people? So, you know, we dress, I know, to be warm, but we're also dressed to show off, don't we? You know, and that sort of thing. And I said it's sort of a blue skies. I remember what Stephen Hawkins, what he said about us being very careful about what robotics is going to do to us. You know, if we don't sort of, you know, look at the issue, you know, of the social impact of technology, for example. I mean, he's a brilliant scientist, you know, he would be believing totally in science, but at the same time, he can see the social effects here. So, yes, great. It could be what COVID is is done to us, it could be the wake-up call we needed to really have to look at the environment and about sort of saving the environment by not being so consumption, obsessed with consumption, obsessed with sort of just, getting in a car and driving and all that. But at the same time, we are social animals and we have a well-being issues here. So I think it's going to be probably a hybrid model. And I'm glad, Rhys, you are actually thinking about it and you're sort of starting the ball rolling. Well, it's a big issue, isn't it? I mean, it's not one I can ask you questions on because we've just started to look at it. And I don't know what the cabinet will decide in 6 months, but we have to sort of look, not only on the positives, but there are many negatives, I think, and we need to avoid those. I mean, in your area, for example, if you're going to have new people joining the organization, new trainees, in the past, they benefited from mentoring, they benefited from feedback, they benefited from the social interaction they had. Will they be able to do the same? And a work at home or a heavily hybridized model in favor of home working? That's the sort of questions we really need to think about. Thank you.
Well,
microphone's muted. Thank you for that, Councillor Anwami. Councillor Fawzi.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think this is a tremendously interesting subject, and obviously there's so much for us to get to grips with here. As mentioned just now, reduced consumption would be a hugely oh, sorry. Oh, somebody from the council is phoning me. Obviously, one of the things you've taken on board is staff well-being and guidance on boundaries, I think has been noted, but that is, a really important aspect of this. And you've already noted that. Cost for staff I wanted to mention, because obviously there is a cost of working from home, and the tax reduction you mentioned is small and fiddly to calculate. One of the opportunities I think there is here is in the reduced carbon footprint, and in section 6 you've talked about the number of miles travelled, and I think this underspend gives us an opportunity, and I would ask for 3 things really. That we measure the number of active travel miles that people undertake, that we reward active travel mileage. When I worked for the Open University, if you cycled to a location, you could claim quite a small amount, but you could claim for cycling to a location. Well, it does give you an encouragement, even if it's absolutely nominal, it gives you some encouragement. And I would like us to survey the barriers to active travel amongst our staff. So I think that is one of the opportunities that exists here, because there's quite a considerable underspend, and we could utilise that to encourage active travel, which thank you.
You're on mute, Chair.
On mute. Councillor Hughes.
Morning, Rhys. I was genuinely proud today, Rhys. It's great that Newport have worked with Southampton. I thought it was a brilliant report by Southampton. I thought, it nailed a lot of the issues. It wasn't a positive report in the sense that it was all glossing over everything. It went into a lot of the things that we will experience. I thought you presented really well, Rhys. I think, it's great to see that balance this morning and a focus on staff being at the centre. I was lucky in a way. About 7 or 8 years ago, I went through this process with a very large charity in the UK, who went through all the change management that was involved with moving from an old building to a new building, and all the change management and working from home that we looked at then, and hot desking and all the issues that we're looking at now. And I think the danger sometimes, and I think you reflect on that, is that sometimes the benefits really sort of sound exciting at the beginning of the process, and then as you get into it a year down the line, you start picking up on some of the negatives, you know. And I think for us, you've touched on all the things like the you know, all the well-being issues and all this, but it's the danger that you become very prescriptive and performance managed when you work from home, that you just want to do the job that you're actually paid to do, tick the boxes, get through your appraisal, and then you lose all that creativity and that sort of exchange of ideas and everything that comes from working in an office, and also the mutual support you get from your colleagues, from your peers, you know, about the protection also you get, you know, from that. I think what we found at the end of the process really was that there's a real need for incredible management. I think, you know, managers who are able to sort of manage, who are able to look at this process. And I think one of the dangers for a big organisation is that we have high turnover of staff, and there's that constant sort of bringing in new managers who don't maybe get the importance of good management in relation to flexible working. And that's something just to sort of bear in mind, I think, is that, you know, with an agency that has high turnover management staff, which big agencies often have, there's a danger. I think, yeah, we've talked about the boundaries. I think you were really good on that. You know, the need for staff to understand, switch that thing off. You know, there are things like you say about bills at home. I think there's a lot of work being done in social work certainly now around tackling anxiety, you know, which is almost like a new thing in the sense that, you know, for me, certainly through COVID, the most stressful period I've ever had, I guess, through COVID hasn't been to do with the virus. It's been to do with moving house and actually being off the internet for 2 weeks and not being able to do anything, you know, which caused huge anxiety. And I think you often see it with members now. If they're being cut off or their internet is poor, it just raises that anxiety level in people, and you know, it's just about awareness. You've mentioned the things about, you know, the size of the civic centre. What do we do with the building if we did constrict ourselves? You know, it's a hugely significant, iconic building. The staff going into the city centre for lunchtime, for after work, for buying and all that sort of stuff, and the impact it has on the city centre, I think is really important. I think your conclusion is spot on. I think, you know, there are massive benefits to get from working from home, more flexible, more agile working. I think it's great for staff that it brings in. We need to look at staff that can't do that, obviously, for various reasons at home. But I think there are huge opportunities. I think the virus has actually pushed HR, hasn't it, sort of forward maybe 5 years, you know, on actually people's understanding of flexible working and home working and how it can work. We would never have got to this position as quickly. So, you know, there are going to be benefits. But I just think it's about that sort of little bit of caution initially around, will those short-term gains actually materialize into long-term gains in the long term, and can it lead to staff actually leaving the agency, you know, because they just don't like that sort of lack of, because I think humans, I think the report says in it somewhere that, you know, for humans we're very sort of, there's that need for human contact, you know, that real need for sort of peer support and social support. And I think, you know, that's the main fear for me, is that, you know, that those short-term gains of environmental and everything else that we look at will be negated somehow by some of the negatives. But I think you actually nailed everything, and it's very hard to actually go into detail in any of those issues because you're on it. And I was filled with confidence today, Rhys, about the fact that you're getting the issues, and it's really positive that we're at the beginning of the process. So thanks very much.
Thanks for that. Can I just I suppose a couple of responses to those. So we've talked to other organisations, so we've obviously been part of this research, but we have talked to other organisations as well that have gone through this and trying to learn from some of the mistakes they've made, because I think you can rush at fundamental changes headlong and then you have problems with buy-in and stickability, etc. Now we're in a slightly different position because essentially this has been forced on us and we're 11 months into it now, so this has almost become normal, hasn't it? So I think we've overcome some of those things, but actually some of the more fundamental things about what we look like in the future, we're really careful we get them right. But we've got evidence and time, and I think those are the things that we've got going in our way. Just to pick up two other things you've said, because I think they do have an impact. The civic centre, I suppose my point about the civic would be, we're massively underutilising it before COVID. It was designed for a world that doesn't exist anymore. All right, so actually, even if we went back to all right, we'll have the same sort of occupancy as we had previously, we still only need a fraction of that building. So the question is, what do you do? Now, I think, and I you know, you just mentioned it, Councillor, it's an iconic building. It's the building of the people of Newport. So, you know, we need to fill it with something. Are they community organisations? Are they other organisations? Are they educational organisations? I don't know the answers to those questions. But, you know, we know we've got organisations in Newport who need space. How do we bring them? How do we work with them to bring them into the civic centre so we can, you know, we can utilise the space, we can support them, we can make some of those working relationships we've got even better because we're working in the same place as them. So I think, you know, I certainly wouldn't be advocating a situation in which we, you know, we've had very minimal numbers in the civic centre and just left it empty, because I just think that's not utilising your assets then. And the other bit about tech anxiety, because obviously I sit in quite a lot of committee meetings and council meetings, etc. And, you know, we'll all have our own little individual experiences with IT. But generally, the IT is held up really well. The biggest limiting factor to IT is broadband provision. You know, without a shadow of a doubt, when I'm working with other organisations as well, and we have joint meetings, that is the amount of people who say to me, I've got to turn my camera off now, and it's because of their home broadband. So that, you know, we need broadband providers coming along with the way the world is looking now. You know, there needs to be greater bandwidth for everybody, and I think that's got to be a bigger drive, because the requirements, we're working on some clever innovations in order to shift where what things get piped down into our network security and what things don't, you know, so that will help a bit. But actually, you know, if you're living somewhere which has got fibre to the property, you're going to have a significantly better experience than somebody that's got copper travelling from about 1.5 miles from a station. So look, you know, they are some of the big things we need to look at as well.
Chair, quickly, I think the actual way Newport dealt with the IT, I think, has been phenomenal. I think, you know, how you've actually taken us from a relatively, it was a good starting point, I know, but to be able to manage meetings and that has been great. I think for the company I did work for, I think we ended up years later going to a 3-2 work balance where you were allowed to work 3 days at home or 3 days in the office, and that worked really well in the end. So that was the conclusion we came up with, just for you know, future knowledge. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ferris, and then I've got Councillor Hoover.
Yes, excellent report, Rhys. Very, very readable, very understandable. One statistic that struck me, the saving of 235,000 miles of unnecessary journeys. It's unbelievable. Is that right? 235,000 miles, yes? Has been saved.
Before I'm going to just get to that bit in the report, sorry, Councillor, so I can look at it. So yeah, significant reduction in the journeys. Bear in mind, that was April to August.
Wow, I mean, that's so just April to August, so maybe 500,000 miles over the year.
Yeah, but just to put that in context, so a number of years ago, because this is a figure that's always stuck in my head.
Yeah.
When Tracy Lee was chief exec here, she had put in place a project which was 2 million miles, because we would organisationally we were doing 2 million miles staff journeys at that point. So we've reduced. We've got a pretty low staff mileage anyway. All right, so that's because we've got a series of fleet vehicles, we've got electric vehicles, etc. So we've done a good job on that. But what this is doing is demonstrating. But actually, if you're doing more of those activities online and in different ways, then that's the possibility for reducing it. Caveat though, the caveat with this is, in an ideal world, how many of those things would have been significantly better if you'd done them face to face? All right. So don't take it as there's a massive opportunity here, because there's an opportunity, but there's further analysis. Because if you're saying to a social worker that they actually did a family conference via Teams, what would have been better? Would it have been better getting there? Absolutely, 100% would have been. So look, you know, I would just, there's a note of caution in that. There's more work we need to do around it.
So
okay.
Blue sky thinking, but with your feet still on the ground, effectively. But
yeah. Look, you know, as I said, organisationally, we've done a pretty good job of hammering that figure down anyway. All right, but there's opportunity there. It does have a massive impact. What's not counted in there is the other journey. So in the data you've got, you know, about half our staff live more than 5 miles away from the civic centre. Now, some of those will get on public transport to come to work. Quite a lot of them will drive. Actually, what's not counted this, because we've got no way of recording that, is actually how much of that has been impacted. And I'll just give you an example of that. You know, it's a very personal example. I commute into Newport every day. I normally do 18,000 miles a year. I did 2,000 miles last year. You know, now I am coming into the office. I'm not coming into the office that often, but I am coming into the office. It's that other impact. We haven't got, so this is the figures in there just to demonstrate there's a potential there. There's a much bigger non-visible mileage there. I go back to the comments Councillor Forsey made around the active travel. We do need to do more work on that. We've done quite a lot of work on it, so we'll pull some of that together as well. But that's probably the bigger benefit. It's the other miles not claimed or not driven.
As a rule of thumb, of course, the statistic that sticks in my mind is 250,000 miles is the distance from here to the moon. So it does strike home what distances we're talking about. Yeah. Reading the report, there's under the feelings of isolation, it says what growing anecdotal suggestions that replicating the office environment at home is not conducive to positive health and well-being. I'm glad you seem to take the mental health of the staff to heart. I'd add to the anecdote. I understand in the USA, because of the size of the country, most of the postal department has lone workers working in isolation, and there's a high incidence of breakdown. And of course, being America with greater access to firearms, there's a higher incidence of suicides, and worse still, postal workers killing other people as well, apart from themselves. And this has earned a rather grim nickname for this pattern of events as going postal. So it's a known thing. We do have to consider the well-being of the individual. I'm glad to see you have that on board.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So look, HR are doing some more work on that. So there are different models. So we've obviously and again, I've sent it out to every councillor. There's a series of packages of support available for people's mental well-being. We have been doing things like online yoga classes, mindfulness classes, and things like that. So you know, I'd encourage you to take that up as well, because they are really good. And obviously guidance for managers then on how they support their staff, because it is difficult, and given people's individual circumstances, they're all different as well, and they're dealing with different challenges. So that, you know, we're trying to take that on board, but also people often like, I think probably mainly if I was thinking about it, but people often like a segregation between work and home life. If I've just sent you a desk, a chair, and a monitor, and a keyboard and a mouse, and you've had to set that up somewhere in your house, that's kind of eating into that as well. So we're having we're re-looking at some of that as well, because you know, some of the feedback, yes, from a musculoskeletal point of view and a health and safety point of view, from you know your physical environment, it's absolutely needed. But there are some other issues with it as well. So, and again, we're learning some of this stuff as we go along. But the important thing is that we take all that into consideration before we make any fundamental organisational changes.
Last thing, if I may, Chair. I wonder, really, are we haunted by the ghost of Leighton Andrews? Remember his schemes to try and amalgamate all the councils, and if that was on the cards, as it seemed to be at one point, it was visioned very probably that we'd be running Newport from offices at Tredoman. Do you think with this this lack of use of space, you know, there might be a second look at utilisation of buildings with other authorities?
It references in the report. So Welsh Government are already doing a piece of work around public sector bodies and buildings. I believe Public Service Board has got an assets group now, which is looking at shared usage, and we've started doing a bit of work with health around it as well. So I think, you know, it's a bit of a no-brainer, right? You know, there are a number of public assets out there that are underutilised, and not just in Newport, I would just say across the UK. They were underutilised prior to COVID, and they are going to be even more underutilised now. So actually, looking at different ways in which you can utilise some of those facilities, and bringing some of them back to life as well. You know, so I think there are obviously some really opportunities within some of that. I don't think it will, you know, I don't think it will create a scenario in which Welsh Government want to relook at that whole situation around merger of local authorities. Obviously, there's facility, I think, in the Local Government Elections Act for that to happen. Should there be a requirement if a local authority wants to do it, but I don't think, you know, that's something that we should be overly worried about at the moment. You know, and I think you would all agree, and I certainly would. You know, local democracy should be delivered locally.
Yeah. Okay. You know? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hourihane.
Thank you, Chair. Most of the points I wanted to touch on have already been covered. We've had a very good discussion on this, and I would like to thank Rhys for the scoping paper that he's given us. There's an awful lot to be thought about in there. Yesterday at Democratic Services, we started to talk about the hybrid meetings, and Mr. Price explained to us that it was something we were going to need to provide under the new Welsh Government Act. But I was concerned about the dehumanisation of the council, and some of that was echoed. But that is why I want to come back to this infamous point 6 on page 51 of the report. Now, you talk in terms of the monetarisation of carbon reduction, and this is a very attractive thing to do because all of the senior managers and the cabinet are looking at these numbers and thinking, oh, savings, savings, savings. But you have talked about it previously, Rhys, when you said whilst maintaining the levels of service. But I think you did agree earlier that we're not maintaining the levels of service, we're providing a different service. And what we've managed to do is, during this period, we've managed to do 30,900 less journeys, an average of 3 miles per journey. So taking up Councillor Forsey's point, there is some scope for active travel there. And it may be, in some cases, quicker to get a mile or two on a push bike rather than driving a car. But nevertheless, we would have to have dual usage, because once you get beyond 2 or 3 miles, you know, the car comes into its own, and we're wasting staff time, which is infinitely more costly than fuel. And also, I noticed the number of claimants at a third less. So a third of the staff, sorry, 2/3 of the staff no longer go and visit clients or customers, whatever way you want to term it. So is that really the service we want to be seen to be given as a council? Because I know in my own ward that lack of contact by the old and the vulnerable is a much bigger problem than the reduction in the carbon footprint. On journeys over 100 miles, I must welcome that, because that is where video conferencing really come into its own, and where you're meeting people on a very infrequent basis, probably at very senior levels of the council. It's the sort of time when video conferencing really does come into it. But I'd like to go, excuse me, down a little bit further to talk about the carbon reduction, and again, you've monetarised the benefits, but I would suggest to you that we've actually increased our carbon footprint, because if you come from a fairly well-controlled office, we've got our building management systems and all the other things, so we've got temperature control, and then you ask somebody to work in a house or a small office on their own, they've probably got to put on a heating system for the full house to gain any benefit from it. And I think we really need to look at that one again, because I think it actually is increasing our carbon footprint while exporting our own cost base. And excuse me, this is not just a criticism of off-based stuff. You know, we've done it as a country where we say, oh, we reduced our carbon footprint, but all we've done is exported our carbon footprint to another part of the globe. And we're having this argument up at Cleveland, I think, at the moment, as to whether or not we should mine coal in this country, or we should bring the coal in, or better still, bring in the treated steel. So we've stuck the onus on South America to produce our steel, which we're claiming reduces our carbon footprint. I'll leave it at there, but I do really welcome the paper you've given us, and I welcome all the comments that colleagues have made earlier. Thank you, Chair.
Should I just respond
Yeah.
to that? So I thought a couple of things. Let's just say this again. Those figures are just they are not. I don't want this to be anywhere. I think one of the comments made earlier on was, I think Councillor Al-Nawami said it was nice to see a report that wasn't about performance of money. So don't take that as a potential saving. It's an illustration of the reduction in mileage, which has a knock-on effect. So, you know, certainly don't want to monetize any of this. That's just a fact. There is a financial figure associated with those miles. I think the bigger reduction we'd have is the non-claimable miles, which will be about people's commuting back and forth. So it says earlier on in the report, so we this is linked in with the carbon management plan, which we've got in place with 2018 and 2022, and the sustainable travel strategy. And also we're signed up to the Gwent travel charter. All right, so there's some more information in there around some of that. And I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Aaron. I think I said, as I said earlier on, there's an energy consumption reduction in the Civic Centre because there's less staff there, energy and light. We have passed that on because, you know, you're all at home at the moment. We've got a lot of staff at home working. They've got energy usage at home. There's a monetary value to that, but there's also a carbon impact of it as well. So it's a complicated equation between balancing that and the reduction in commuting, etc. So there's more work we need to do there. And as I said, there's a variety of different things that we're involved in, and we are doing some work with our senior managers on that shortly, around some of those things around carbon reduction, because I think it's one of the things we need to take really seriously. Just to say, the other thing we have to remember though is that what we're comparing it with is the Civic Centre, and if there are a series of words I wouldn't use to describe the heating system in the Civic Centre is controlled. All right, so and so for people viewing this who are not aware of the Civic Centre, it's a started construction 1930s Art Deco building. The heating system is probably from the 1930s. And the heating goes on a Monday morning, it starts getting warm Thursday afternoon. So, you know, we are dissipating a lot of energy in that building straight up and out. Now, the biggest impact we're going to have on our energy consumption is when we shift the server suite out of there in the next year to a purpose-built data center. That will have energy. We will be passing on some of the consumption, but significantly reduced energy consumption compared to the Civic Centre. And that will take about half of the energy consumption of the Civic Centre away at that point. So that is singly the biggest thing we're going to do around it. I think some of the other the carbon reduction, the biggest gains of carbon reduction are going to be commuting. As Councillor Fawzi said, we need to tie that back into the active travel work that we're doing as well. Yeah, then that's going to be the biggest one for us. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Evans.
Yeah, hi. So, listen, everything apart from one point that I want to make has been covered. So I'm not going to say that and then go into 10 minutes of a speech. You know, it's everything has been covered, and particularly the chair and Jason and other members have raised have raised some really good points and feedback, and it's an excellent piece of work. The one thing I would like to to expand upon is that I think there's been a lot of goodwill about working from home. You know, during the pandemic, a lot of goodwill. And we've got to be really careful that we don't, I'm not saying that we are, but, you know, I use words, that we don't exploit that goodwill. And I raised this at the Democratic Services Committee yesterday. I've been I've over the space of 24 hours become quite firm on it, that we do need now perhaps to be saying to staff that when we agree their working hours from home, that you also get an allowance of X amount towards your broadband, towards your workspace at home, with some advice and guidance about how we facilitate that in terms of sitting correctly and so on, and that should not form part of a salary or settlement. That should be an additional payment. And I think also we need to look at that for all associated council workers, including councillors. There's been a great deal of goodwill, but if it is to become, as we face the challenges of the new normal, more consistent, then, you know, very similar to perhaps if you work in London to like a London wait-in, you know, you get a work from home allowance to pay towards your broadband and so on and so forth. And I think that is like really important. But yeah, no, great body of work. I'll shut up. Thank you to everybody else who have made most of the points. Yeah.
Can I come back on that one, Chris, with you? Because part of me agrees, but also the same side of things. Because like I said, again, I work from home, but what I'm saving is, right, I pay for my electricity and I pay for my gas, which is a lot more, but I'm saving on my petrol driving back and forth to work every day. So it balances out a little bit, funding for people, giving people an opportunity to pay for their broadband. Well, nobody pays for my petrol to drive back and forth every day. So you sort of, it can open it up. I understand what you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying. People are using things more. I think it's £6 a week. Is it £6 a week that we get for, or is it £3 a week that you get as a tax relief base?
Yeah, but you have to claim that. Yeah. Listen, I do seem to.
I just wanted to say that. So I thought, oh, hang on, I wouldn't mind that myself. I do get my equipment and I do get things covered for me, in my working contract. But I think sometimes the whole broadband being paid is, unless it's a specific requirement of your job, I think it's a bit of a. I just want to throw that in there. It's not up to me. It's,
I kind of seem to have an ability to spark a debate, and then so that's good. I think that's important. I think that's why we're here. And I just feel as if the goodwill dividend needs to be firmed up in some sort of, not a gross assumption. And yeah, sorry, I didn't want to go on too much, to be totally frank, because Jason, Yvonne, and yourself in your opening, Laura, covered just about everything. Yeah, I do think we need to do some thinking around that, and if we, and some and looking into it, so it's either firm or not, But anyway, you know best.
Can I just, broadly. Councillor Evans, yes, absolutely agree with you. It is very complicated. All right, so look, I suppose my view. So this is a conversation where HR directors across Wales are having. It's part of the discussion with Welsh Government and unions through the Joint Council as well. And we've got to strike a balance, because actually there are financial impacts, both positive and negative, to working from home. There are lots of benefits to working from home. There are negatives, and I think we've tried to reflect that in the report to say, it's not the panacea to all ills. It is not the perfect solution to everything. It is not going to be great for everybody. And what we're trying to do is balance somewhere in the middle. But absolutely, and I think we picked that in the report as well. If we make a policy decision to say, as an organisation, the way we'll operate in the future is this way, then we need to make sure the remuneration package is in place that equates to that. Totally take on board your point. I don't know if Gareth wants to say. Obviously, the issue with members is slightly different because
it's fine. I don't really. I'm just getting it out there, because otherwise we'll go on a complete Well, I think, you know, we've gone on enough tangents, so I'm glad to see that the thinking is there, and, you know, kind of ahead of the curve again in that comment. Cheers.
Thanks, Chris. Matthew Evans, Councillor Evans, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. You know, again, like Chris Evans, I'm not going to go through all the points which you raised before, and clearly there are lots of pros and cons, but a couple of things I am concerned about. We've breached upon them, but talking about the sort of business networking elements, which face-to-face you can't do, the impact on the city centre. The other one is about staff development. If you're a trainee or apprentice or something like that, working with a team of people and just being able to have the ability to ask some questions face to face around there, and we've got to recognise that that's such an important part. And I do feel terribly sorry for anybody starting their career or starting a new job having to do this virtually, because you can learn so much from your peers in that organisation. And the final one, I'm not negative, but one other thing is about the information station. I still get reports from people, and I think Phil mentioned it, the face-to-face contact, and I'm very disappointed it hasn't been opened when there are elderly, vulnerable people. Banks are open, post offices are open, buildings are open, and I do feel that, you know, the information station is somewhere where we should be providing that service on a one-to-one for those people who don't like using IT, who can't wait to an hour on the phone, who need that face-to-face reassurance. So I'm not trying to be negative, but and there are plenty of benefits, and I'd welcome the fact that we keep parking and altering down to a minimum, but I just think that those particular issues are relevant.
Okay, can I yeah, thanks for that. As I said, I think the business support, business engagement side of it, I think, you know, when you're looking through, if you had a hybrid model where your efforts for face-to-face activities would be, there are certain things, certain activities that are going to pop to the top of that list. And I also, you know, I think we've picked up in the report as well, there's a balance here between what's right for the organisation, what's right for the city as well, as far as the city centre. So again, you know, I certainly wouldn't advocate any situation in which we had, you know, significantly less people in the future in the civic centre and just left it. You know, if we're going to do that, there's got to be a plan for having somebody else in there. We want more people in there. You know, on a good day, I think the maximum occupancy when we did the assessment pre-COVID was about 385 people. Well, we want 3,000 people in there. You know, but how would you do that? It's not going to be through our staff. We simply haven't got that many staff. So how would you do that? So I think that's a real tricky issue that we've got to try and overcome. So I think there's quite a lot of work with that. And the more people we've got in that location, the more beneficial that's going to be for the city centre, because people will want to go somewhere for the bank and shops, etc. So I think we do need to crack that. Staff development, you're absolutely right. It's one of the biggest challenges. We have onboarded people into the organisation. We have had new starters in the organisation. It is a challenge for all sorts of reasons. But if you take it from their point of view, you know, you pick up so much in those first formative couple of months when you start working for an organisation about how it operates and, you know, the culture of the organisation, etc. We can do online training packages. We can have one-to-ones with your manager. You can have meetings with your team. You can give them mentors. You can put coaching in place. But there are certain things that we just cannot pick up unless you're actually in an environment with lots of other people. And the information station, I'll take the comment and I'll pass that on, Councillor Evans. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Rhys.
Thank you. Yvonne, did you want to come back on something?
Just a couple of points very briefly. I'd just like to say what a good job the Open University do with working from home, and obviously they've got many years of experience of doing that, so you know, that may be a good example to look at. In particular, the thing that Reece did just mention about having a mentor, and in fact, in their circumstances, they actually appoint a paid mentor to new employees, which I thought was very valuable. And I can say, you know, in my case, it sort of led to a long-term friendship, you know, and then the people I've mentored, I've continued to have a long-term friendship with them, even though I think we've all left the organisation now. But it did really, you know, help. And it's not just you mentor this person, you actually paid to do so many hours, and it's not your line manager, but it's a person to go to and to help. And the other point I wanted to make is home working under lockdown is quite a different thing to home working under freer circumstances. I mean, we're all climbing the walls at the moment, but you know, working from home when we are allowed to actually meet our friends down the pub or
That's
whatsoever,
really good. That's a really good point.
Not be quite such a trying situation, will it? Thank you.
You're absolutely right. So I think if we could all cast our minds back to last summer, back end of the summer, when we were allowed to do the odd thing, I think people coped with the lockdown. And I think that just goes along the line for all of the lockdown restrictions. It's particularly challenged at the moment because the restrictions are pretty harsh and the weather's pretty bad and has been for an extended period of time. So I think, you know, when we make it, we have to reflect on the entire period and the things we've learned from that entire period and people's view of the entire period before we make any decisions on what we do in the future.
Thank you. And Yvonne, as everybody else said, I completely agree. When I'm working from home in the summer, you can go and meet somebody for lunch as opposed to not doing anything now. And it's you know, we're in totally different circumstances, aren't we? So very valid. Councillor Al Nuami.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Just wondered, can I just say I agree with Councillor Matthew Evans' point, re the information station. I've had... Can we admit that, please, Chair? Yeah, we don't agree.
So, I thought I was in luck then when you met. There we are, never mind, I live in hope.
Yeah, you know, I'm not going to repeat it, but I think that's a well-made point, and I've had many residents in respect of things that they did with the information station and they missed that sort of contact. So I leave that with you, Reece. Just wondered where we're going from here now, because we've had a very good discussion on this. It strikes me as being something that is just not going to be particular to Newport. You know, we normally sort of look at other local authorities. Is there, you know, is the sort of Welsh Local Government Association, whatever we're going to be doing is going to be sort of consistent, presumably, with what other local authorities are doing and so on. So just wonder where we're going from here now.
Okay, so look, it is, I don't think everybody's in the same place, but I would suggest that every local authority in Wales is having similar conversations at the moment. It isn't just a Newport specific issue or opportunity. So there's all sorts of conversations going on around how you progress with it. So and that will, a lot of that will depend on the individual circumstances of each local authority as well. Okay, so you know, those sort of conversations are going on, as I said, across the HR directors network with Welsh Government through Joint Council. We've got Joint Council coming up shortly, and I'm sure some of the implications of this will be part of those discussions as well. Where we're going with as an organisation is, I suppose, really over to you. Where I need to get to is a report at some point in the next 3 to 6 months that I go back to Cabinet with and say, you know, this is what we think, really. This is what we think the world should look like. You know, if that's in a 3-month timescale, that would be significantly better, because I think the world is going to start changing at that point. So, and in amongst that, I need the views of yourselves and also our staff and our managers, because there will be lots of different views around it. And we need to come up with some answers to some of the tricky things that you've raised and we've raised in the report. You know, how do you overcome some of these things? So, you know, whether you want to make a series of, I mean, you made obviously a lot of comments today, which we'll take on board, whether you want to spend more time doing that, whether you want a further conversation. Honestly, the ball is in your court. Those are my kind of timescales. If you want a further conversation in the next meeting, more than happy to come back. If you want further information about things, you want to focus on specific areas to unpick them a bit more than happy to do that. As I said, I think my opening line was, this is the start of a conversation around it.
Right, can you hear me now? Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, I think it might be a good thing for us to look at this, you know, when there is sort of a, let's say, some sort of progress on this, really, because at the moment, you know, it's we thinking aloud, as it were. Maybe in 3-4 months' time, this would have crystallized a lot more, and maybe it would be useful for the committee then to have you back, Reese, and then for us to have a sort of a more discussion on more specific things, really. Just a suggestion, Chair.
I agree. I think it's something that we should look at. It would be interesting to see where we are on this. Maybe, as Councillor Forsey alluded to, in 6 months, 6 to 8 months, or even a year, where we're back into when we're out of this lockdown, we're back into what's called the new normal, and then just see how we're getting on and what conclusion we came up with, and, you know, did we go with the hybrid model and how it's going. You know, I'd be interested to see it come back, I think. So it's been an interesting discussion, I think, and like I said, a really comprehensive report, and it's going to be interesting to see once we're out of this stay home tier 4, how things get on and how our staff cope and everything else. But thank you for your time, Reese, especially as you're on holiday.
Chair, just before you finish up on that, could I suggest that if Reese does come back to us, and again with your permission, that we have an options paper rather than a scoping paper to try and put some sort of focus on the debate, because if you let us all talk on, you won't achieve very much. So we need, you know, specific options, or, you know, we can just reject his ideas if that's your preferred.
Yeah, I guess I'm hoping that the plan would have been in place by now, by the time that Reese comes back, and it would just be interesting to see, just from my perspective, and I think from what we're saying, you know, how our staff have coped, how we're getting on, you know, lessons learned, and what was the outcome. But I suppose that, you know, obviously, as I said, as a committee, we can discuss that. And Reese, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, if I make a suggestion then, so we'll obviously have comments from the committee today and some of the questions you've raised, and we'll look at that. We're going to be going out to staff to start talking to staff about the more detail really around what they want and some of the things we need to pick up from their point of view. If we pull that together then, because obviously we organisationally going to have to make some decisions, because we need to start talking to staff about what the world's going to look like post lockdown. If we pull that together into what essentially would be pretty much the report that would go to cabinet with a series of options in, and bring that back through the committee for your comments on that at that stage, and then that obviously can go to cabinet, and then we'll make a commitment to maybe come back 6 months and 12 months after implementation then, with a kind of review of what's happened and lessons learned and changes we might need, because invariably we'll make some decisions in the next couple of months and we'll have to change them in 6 months time because actually it hasn't worked out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Reese. Well, as I said, thank you for your time on that one. Go back to enjoying the rest of your day off.
Thanks very much. Everybody look after yourselves.
Thanks, Reese.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, good. So thanks for that. So we've got to just conclude our two reports. So we've got obviously the PIL PSPO conclusion. I think one thing that I picked up on that's been noted was Reece, obviously, Chris, what you mentioned too about the wording in with regards to the prostitution and the street, the curb crawlers. I think my personal opinion on that is that we allow them to make the wording and let them go out with it rather than it coming back to us, because obviously they're desperate to get that out for consultation, so it comes back to us, so so we can make a move on it. I think if we insist that the wording comes back to us before it goes out for consultation, then we're delaying the process. I mean, how did everybody else feel on that one?
Can I come back to you there, Laura? I agree. I agree. I mean, I don't want it to go back and forth. I don't think we had a reassurance that the wording will be changed or looked at, and I didn't mean for whoever it was that spoke. I think it was a police officer that appeared to be quite defensive about the wording, which I understand. I've raised it. I think it's flawed. It's a matter for others then to take. That's the purpose of scrutiny. But yeah, hopefully they will take on board what I thought was a constructive feedback, and also as regards the consultation, reaching specialist groups as well as the avenues that were suggested. And I thank the committee for giving me a space in order to give that feedback.
Thanks, Chris. And I agree. I mean, the wording can be misconstrued in different directions depending on how you're thinking. I think so to have it in there properly, or a little bit more clearly would be better. So I think obviously we have that point on the PSPO, as well as you've the additional organisations which they need to contact.
Chair, thank you so much for the understanding. Thank you.
No, I agree, because as you said, we need to be clear on what's going out to consultation. Councillor Anongi, are you indicating to speak, or are you typing there? I can't see which.
Chair, I only thought really 2 words, if we can add 2 words to the question. 11A it is, isn't it, Chris?
I'm just calling it up now. So it starts on, I've got 9 here on what I've sort of screenshot. So no persons shall enter the area, comma, engage, comma, loiter or solicit on the streets. Sorry, McDad, just bear with me, because
I thought,
and to me, reading that and people that I've spoke to, again, I don't want to open up another debate. That's why I wanted to suggest.
Just listen, Chris. All I'm suggesting is that will improve a great deal, because as it stands, says no person shall enter, which will apply to any person. Yeah. But here is, if we say no person shall enter the area for the purpose of engaging, loitering, unsoliciting on the street for sexual exploitation within the restricted area. So all we need to say for the purpose of, that's all I'm suggesting. But
I don't think that will define it enough. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I can only rely on the advice that may have been forthcoming. I question also, but I don't want to be difficult here. I do also question the sexual exploitation definition as laid out by the PCSO definition. But I made all those points in the meeting. Laura, our chair, I'll take your steer. And I'll, I've raised it as much as I would like to rewrite it. I think it does need to get out there, and I don't have the ability to rewrite it. Let's talk to the experts, as we've suggested, and maybe they can come up with a thought. And that's all that I was trying to say, McDad. Regardless of my personal views, I just want to make the potential legislation better. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And Yvonne, you had a point as well about the opening up, didn't you, where regards to the location of the people, which I think is also a valid point of, are you inside Newport, outside Newport, are you a business, are you an organisation? I think if we can put that in our recommendations, I think that's also a very valid point for the consult, because obviously this is the consultation that we're looking at now.
Yeah, yes, please. I think that question 1 needs to be enhanced a little bit to see whether they're in Newport, outside of Newport, individual, organisation, charity, business, and if they're speaking on behalf of a charity or a business, what that charity or business is, so that we know where this information is coming from. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I think those are the areas that we picked up. If we're happy then for the consultation, our recommendations for the consultation on that one. I don't think there was anything other than that one. And then obviously the which I honestly didn't think was going to go on as long as it did, the new way of working, returning to the new normal, but it was very interesting. So I think it was a very comprehensive report, and the work that they've done is really good. Especially as it's a lot of unknowns on there. Really, we can't, we don't know what this new way of new normal is going to be. We're still in the old ways. I think I got an indication that there wasn't anything that we wanted adding into that report or any amendments. We were happy to push that one for cabinet as well. And obviously, correct me if I'm wrong on there.
Well, I just wanted the active travel to be first of all measured, rewarded, and surveyed to see what the barriers to active travel were. So there's three prongs to the active travel question, from my point of view.
Okay, that seems okay. So our next meeting is the 30th of April, which is I think that's Thursday evening, and that is hopefully then the return of the PSPO after consultation. So I'm guessing another interesting debate. I think that's all. Is that all, Neil, that's on the next meeting? It's just the PSPO?
That's right, Chair. The meeting after that will be the 3rd of June, so that'll be the safeguarding annual report coming for that. That was moved from April to June, and I'm not sure what yourself and the committee would like. Was you looking for Reece to come back with the new normal report before it goes to cabinet for the June meeting?
How do you feel? Well, I don't know. I mean, it would be interesting to see what they've come up with. What is that? That's given them 4 months, I guess. Do we think that's enough time for them, or would we prefer to see it a little bit later? I think. I'll take steer from any of you if you have got an opinion.
Chair, isn't it useful for it to come before the cabinet look at it, if that's going to be ready?
Okay, and similar to what
that's what Reece was suggesting. Sorry to interject. Yeah. That's what Reece was suggesting. That they will now develop this this conversational document into an options paper for cabinet. But what he said is before he presents that to cabinet, he'll bring it back to this committee to consult them on any comments you've got on the options.
Yeah.
So
okay,
as soon as that's ready, it can be brought back and put into your work programme.
Okay, so an options paper, as Councillor Hurricane alluded to, rather than an open document, so we're a little bit more guided. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, Chair, if I could, just on that, that's the point I was trying to make about monetarising the savings. We want it to be a best working document, not just somebody will look at it as a method of saving some money.
Okay. Okay, and I think that's been a mammoth meeting today, so thank you everybody for your time.
we're now allowed to go for a walk with 4 people, so socially distanced. Lovely day for it, everyone. Yeah?
Well, I'm going out for a run now before my lunch, so have a good day, everybody, and stay safe. See you all soon.
Pass on the best to Chris. I saw his